I once talked to a woman. She told me about she'd had an accident in an elevator and she'd broken her leg and got stuck under the elevator. And she was there for half an hour before anybody could get to her. And she said in that moment she realized that in this whole universe there was not one single grain of sand that was out of place. And that is a curious vision that comes to people occasionally. When you see suddenly that you've been looking at things in absolutely the wrong way, that you see that the most frightful things that can possibly happen fit in with this. It's very strange and very odd. But the reason is, of course, you see, that when you get rid of the idea of the governor and the governed, the boss and the employee, the king and the subject, there aren't any victims. Every creature that suffers in this world is, unbeknownst perhaps to itself, doing it to itself. No one else is responsible. There are no victims, because the whole thing is a unity. It is of itself so. Everything is of itself so. No one to blame. It's a very interesting experiment to let sound come to your ears. Now why don't you try this? Why don't you all just close your eyes and gently become aware of the whole world of sound around you, in you. Don't try to identify the sound and put names on them. Just let them happen. You should listen like that before you go to sleep at night and realize that you live in a magical, musical continuum all the time. But you see, ordinarily we keep trying to correct what we're listening to. Pay attention to this, ignore that. Say to the children, shut up! I can't hear myself thinking. See? But if you really know how to listen, you can concentrate on anything you want to in the middle of a complete pandemonium. But so in the same way, one could give experimental exercises in listening, in using your eyes, in tasting, in feeling things. For example, picking up rocks and feeling them. Because all this is letting yourself function, because this is an act of faith in one's own being. It is allowing the body to be a democracy instead of a tyranny. Away. So, if you can trust yourself, in other words, to the flow of what's going on, you won't need to resist it. And you'll find it works very well, just as your eyes work well when you don't try to force them. Just as the clothes are comfortable when you become unaware of them. Now, this isn't the same as numbness, you see. It's quite different. Because you experience your body in terms of what you ordinarily call everything else. In other words, as you look around here, we are taught to think, what I'm looking at is out there. Now imagine this. Look. What's the color of your head from the standpoint of your own vision? Nothing? Now watch. It certainly isn't black, is it, behind your eyes? You don't have a sensation of blackness, nor of whiteness. There seems to be nothing there at all, as if you had no head from your own point of view. But actually, what it is, how it looks inside your head, is what you're seeing out here. Because you see, the optical nerves are back here. And your experience of all the shapes and colors around you is a sensation of the state of your brain. So what you're looking at is inside your head. But then you can't be said to be looking at it because inside your head is you. So all this is how you feel. This is you. Only it's true for each person. You are not more specially me than I am you. It's mutual. It's like the dewdrops on the spider's web reflecting one another. So it is this, then, this letting your mind work by itself, letting your eyes see for themselves, that is the preliminary to naturalness.
There comes a point in nearly every life when faith in any form begins to crumble. It doesn't matter whether you call it faith in God, faith in people, faith in progress, or even faith in yourself. There comes a moment when all of it feels absurd, when the world appears to spin without reason, and you stand at the center wondering what on earth any of this is for. And you see, that is a very revealing place to arrive at, because the loss of faith is not the end of the spiritual journey. It is the beginning of it. We grow up believing that faith is something we must cling to, something we must protect from doubt like a fragile flame in a storm. But real faith does not need protection. Real faith is what remains when all beliefs have collapsed. For what you call belief is often only certainty dressed in spiritual clothing, and certainty is brittle, like glass. The moment life becomes unpredictable, it shatters. So what happens when your life stops making sense? When the things you trusted, religion, success, relationships, your very sense of purpose, seem hollow or even cruel? Most people panic. They rush to replace one belief with another. They switch religions, chase new philosophies, or drown themselves in distractions. But the wise do something very strange. They stop running. They stand still in the darkness and let the questions echo, because they know that doubt is not the enemy of faith. It is its purifier. You see, to lose faith is to lose the false ground on which you once stood. And that can feel like dying, because in a sense, it is. The self that you believed was secure, the one that thought it understood what life was, begins to dissolve. But what dies is not you. It is only the illusion that you ever knew what you were doing here. Faith, when it is real, is not a belief that things will be fine. It is the recognition that things already are fine, even when they appear chaotic. The universe is not obliged to make sense to the human mind. And the moment you stop demanding that it should, you begin to see that it is not senseless at all, it is simply vast. When we lose faith, what we are really losing is the idea that life should serve our understanding. We forget that the mind is not the master of life, but its expression. The mind is like a mirror, reflecting what appears before it. But we try to make it a sculptor, carving out meaning, demanding control, demanding permanence. And when reality refuses to conform, we call it meaningless. Yet the absurdity we feel is not in life itself, it is in our insistence that it must fit our definitions. Look carefully and you will see that every crisis of faith is an invitation to look without a map. And that is terrifying, because the map gives us the illusion of direction. We like to think we are on our way somewhere toward enlightenment, success, redemption. But what if the road itself is the destination? What if there is nowhere to arrive, nothing to prove, no cosmic verdict waiting at the end of time? The loss of faith strips away your idols one by one. It shows you that the gods you worshipped, your ideals, your philosophies, your achievements, were always carved from the same stone of thought. And when the stone cracks, you begin to see the emptiness beneath. That emptiness is not a void to fear. It is the space from which life itself emerges. When you lose faith, the ground beneath you disappears because it was never there to begin with. You realize that you have been walking on air the entire time. You begin to laugh, not because the situation is funny, but because you see how absurdly serious you've been about something that was never under your control. Life has never depended on your faith in it. It moves, breathes, and unfolds entirely on its own. The stars are not burning because you believe in them. The waves do not crash upon the shore because you understand the ocean. Life simply is, and your faith or lack of it has nothing to do with its being. This realization is both humbling and liberating. It humbles you because it shows that you were never the center of the story. But it liberates you because it means the story does not depend on you to continue. Losing faith is not a curse. It is a sacred disillusionment. The illusion that dies is the one that whispered, "You must know what this means." And when that illusion dies, what remains is raw experience, the taste of existence without interpretation, the rain falling without reason, the silence that follows your last question, the simple awareness that you are here, breathing, feeling, being. And then something extraordinary happens. In the very moment you stop trying to believe, you begin to see, not with the eyes of the intellect, but with the eyes of presence. You see that faith was never meant to be a belief. It was meant to be a way of seeing. So when you find yourself saying, "I've lost faith in life," pause for a moment. Notice that life has not lost faith in you. The sun still rises, the earth still turns, your heart still beats. Something larger than your understanding is carrying you even through this despair. And that, my friends, is the quiet beginning of real faith. Because faith, when it is pure, is not a conclusion, it is participation. It is the willingness to live without answers and to still marvel at the mystery. It is the courage to trust that what is unfolding is not happening to you, but through you. And when you reach that understanding, when you finally see that losing faith is the invitation to experience life without filters, you begin to see that what you called loss was only the breaking of a shell. Inside that shell, life itself has always been waiting, free, eternal, and complete. When you have truly lost faith, you are standing in a kind of spiritual silence. It is not comfortable at first. The mind screams for meaning. It wants the old symbols back, the gods, the promises, the goals. It wants the ground it used to walk upon. But silence, if you allow it, begins to reveal something extraordinary. You begin to sense that the meaning you were chasing was never out there waiting to be found. It was always in the act of looking itself. The very energy that drove you to seek purpose was the same pulse that creates suns and galaxies. You were never separated from meaning. You were meaning happening in human form. This is why despair can be such a sacred teacher. It is the gate through which the false self cannot pass. Every philosophy, every religion, every grand certainty eventually collapses under the weight of reality. Because life is too vast to fit inside a system of thought. And when your system collapses, you are not left with nothing, you are left with everything. You may have noticed that the people who seem most at peace are not those who have all the answers, but those who have stopped needing them. They laugh easily, they move freely, they are not anxious about being right. It's not that they've discovered some grand secret, it's that they have made peace with not knowing. They have learned to rest in the mystery instead of trying to solve it. You see, losing faith is not about losing your connection to life. It's about losing your illusion of separation. It's about realizing that life was never something happening to you, it was always happening as you. And when that realization dawns, it doesn't come as a thought. It comes as a feeling, a subtle warmth, a quiet recognition that you have always been home. Imagine a wave in the ocean, convinced that it is lost because it no longer feels the security of being near the shore. It forgets that it was never separate from the ocean in the first place. The wave cannot be lost because it is the ocean moving in form. You are that wave. The loss you feel is the ocean reminding you of what you are made of. When we lose faith, what actually happens is that the ego loses its foothold. The part of you that wanted life to serve its plans finally surrenders. You begin to see that life doesn't need your permission to unfold. And in that surrender, a space opens, a stillness that allows reality to be just as it is. That stillness is not apathy, it is awareness. Faith returns then, not as belief, but as trust. Not the trust that everything will go your way, but the trust that even when it doesn't, you are still a part of something immeasurably whole. It is like falling backward into the arms of the universe and discovering they were never not there. What you begin to realize is that life is not a riddle to be solved, but a song to be heard. You don't stand outside it, trying to decode the melody. You are one of the notes. The loss of faith becomes a deep listening, a return to the rhythm you had forgotten while trying so hard to understand the music. Look at a child playing in the sand. There is no agenda there, no doctrine, no search for purpose, and yet the play itself is full of purpose. Life in its purest form is self-fulfilling. The ocean waves not to reach the shore, but because waving is its nature. The stars do not shine to illuminate something else. They shine because shining is what they are. And when you understand this, you realize that you, too, are an expression of life being what it is. You begin to see that even your doubts, your losses, your long nights of the soul are part of that same dance. The darkness is not against the light, it defines it. Without doubt, faith would have no depth. Without loss, love would have no tenderness. Without death, life would have no urgency. Everything that frightened you was secretly working in your favor, shaping you into someone who could finally see without filters. And so the true purpose of faith is not to escape suffering, but to see through it, to look pain in the eyes and realize that even it belongs. When the rain falls, it doesn't ask whether it is doing the right thing. It simply falls. When the wind blows, it doesn't question its direction. It moves, because that is what wind does. And when you lose faith, you too are simply passing through a natural season of the soul. Every human being will face this moment in some form. The mystics called it the dark night. The philosophers called it existential despair. But in truth, it is the same event the moment life strips you bare of all false meanings so that you may encounter the real one. And what is the real one? It cannot be said. Because the moment you say it, you turn it into a concept. But you can feel it like a quiet hum beneath everything that happens. It is the stillness between your thoughts, the pause before laughter, the silence that holds every sound. That silence, that hum, that awareness, that is faith itself. When you realize this, you stop searching for faith as something to hold on to. You begin to see that it was never lost. It only hid behind your attempts to define it. The divine, if you wish to call it that, is not something you find at the end of a road. It is what has been looking through your eyes all along. So when you say, "I've lost faith in life," look again. You haven't lost faith. You've simply lost your ideas about what life should be. And in that loss lies the opportunity to discover what life is. It is not a story with a happy ending. It is not a test to be passed. It is not a puzzle to be solved. It is an ever-unfolding mystery that invites you to participate. You are not meant to believe in it. You are meant to be it. The loss of faith is the final invitation to stop pretending, to stop performing, and to start living. It is the beginning of intimacy with reality. And that intimacy, once it awakens, is the quietest, most unshakable form of faith there is. For the one who has truly lost faith in life does not need to find it again. He realizes that life never asked for his faith in the first place. Life only asked him to see.
Now here is a rather curious thing. You wake up one morning and something has changed. Not outside, mind you, but inside. You see through the games, the rat race, the endless pursuit of more. You understand, perhaps for the first time, that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. Yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. And then comes the peculiar problem. The bills still arrive, the rent is still due, the bank account still dwindles, and you find yourself in this strange position, spiritually awake but financially broke. What a cosmic joke this is. You look around and see people who are fast asleep, utterly unconscious, chasing money like hungry ghosts, and they seem to be doing rather well. Their bank accounts are full, their houses are large, their cars are new. And here you are, having seen through the illusion, and you cannot pay your electric bill. What is going on? Let me tell you something. This is not an accident. This is not some terrible mistake in the cosmic ordering of things. This is precisely how it must be, at least for a time. And if you understand why, you will stop fighting it, and you will begin to see the extraordinary gift hidden in this struggle. You see, money is a very peculiar thing. It is not wealth at all. It is a way of measuring wealth, a symbol, a token, a kind of social agreement. Real wealth is the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food that nourishes your body, the shelter that keeps you warm. Money is simply the bookkeeping. But we have become so enchanted with the bookkeeping that we have forgotten what it was supposed to represent. Think about it. Here is a man with $1 million in the bank. He sits in his office worrying about the stock market, checking his accounts, calculating his net worth. He has forgotten to taste his coffee. He has forgotten to feel the sun on his skin. He has forgotten that he is breathing. Ha ha ha. Is this man wealthy? Or is he so busy counting his tokens that he has lost touch with the actual treasure? When you awaken spiritually, something very interesting happens. You stop being hypnotized by the symbols. You stop mistaking the menu for the meal. The recipe is not the dinner. The map is not the territory. And suddenly, money loses its grip on you. It stops being the most important thing. It stops being the goal of your life. This is wonderful. This is liberation. But it creates a practical problem because the world around you has not woken up. The landlord still wants his rent in dollars, not in enlightenment. The grocer will not accept spiritual wisdom in exchange for bread. And so you find yourself caught between two worlds. Awake in a sleeping world, trying to live by one set of values while surrounded by another. Now let me tell you why this happens to nearly everyone who begins to wake up. The first reason is very simple. When you awaken, you lose your motivation for the game. You see, most people work not because they love the work, but because they are afraid. Afraid of being poor, afraid of being judged, afraid of being left behind in the great race. Fear is the fuel that drives the economic machine. But when you wake up, the fear begins to dissolve. You realize that you came into this world with nothing, and you will leave with nothing. You understand that the purpose of life is not to arrive at death safely with a well-preserved bank account, but to skid in sideways, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, laughing all the way. The terror of poverty loses its teeth. And without that fear driving you, you naturally slow down. You stop clawing your way to the top. You stop sacrificing your present for some imaginary secure future. This is beautiful. This is health. But in a world organized around fear and competition, it means you will probably make less money, at least for a while. The second reason is that awakening has a way of making your old interests fall away. Think about it. Before you woke up, perhaps you were fascinated by climbing the corporate ladder, by impressing your neighbors, by acquiring status symbols. These things gave you energy. They motivated you. They got you out of bed in the morning. But then you see through them. You understand that status is just a game of make-believe, that the corporate ladder leads nowhere in particular, that your neighbors are not paying as much attention to you as you thought. And suddenly, these pursuits feel hollow. They feel like trying to polish plastic cups when you have discovered the mountain spring. You may still go to work. You may still pay your bills, but the fire has gone out of the old ambitions. You are no longer willing to sell your soul for a paycheck. You are no longer willing to spend hours doing work that feels meaningless just to accumulate more tokens. And naturally, this affects your financial situation. Now, here is the third reason, and this one is quite subtle. When you awaken, you become aware of how the money system actually works. And this awareness can make you somewhat reluctant to participate fully in it. You see that the whole economic game is based on fear, on scarcity, on the illusion that there is not enough to go around. You see how it turns people into competitors, into enemies, how it makes them forget their basic humanity. You understand that the person with the most money is not necessarily the most successful human being. In fact, you begin to suspect that the pursuit of wealth often creates a kind of poverty of spirit, a narrowing of consciousness, a loss of the very things that make life worth living. And so you hesitate. You hold back. You do not throw yourself completely into the game because you have seen the cost of winning. This is not laziness. This is wisdom. But it means you will probably not get rich, at least not in the conventional sense. Let me tell you a story. There was once a fisherman who lived by the sea. Every day he would go out in his small boat, catch enough fish to feed his family, and sell a few at the market. Then he would come home, have lunch with his wife, take a nap in the afternoon, play with his children in the evening, and spend the night making music with his friends. One day a wealthy businessman came to visit. He saw the fisherman resting in the afternoon and said, "Why are you not out fishing? You could catch more fish." "Why would I want to catch more fish?" the fisherman asked. "Well, if you caught more fish, you could sell them and make more money. And then what would I do with the money? You could buy a bigger boat," the businessman explained. "With a bigger boat, you could catch even more fish. Eventually, you could buy several boats, hire other people to fish for you, and become very wealthy." "And then what?" the fisherman asked. "Then you could retire and spend your days resting in the afternoon, playing with your children, and making music with your friends in the evening." The fisherman smiled. "But that is what I am doing now." Do you see? The fisherman had not failed to understand how to make money. He had simply seen through the illusion that making money was the point. He's already living the life that the businessman would spend years trying to earn. He was already wealthy in the only way that matters. When you wake up spiritually, you become more like the fisherman. You realize that the goal everyone is chasing is already available right now. The peace they hope to buy with retirement savings is available in this breath. The security they think money will provide is already here in the simple fact of being alive. The freedom they imagine wealth will bring is already present when you stop being enslaved by the need for more. But here is what happens next. Once you see this, once you really understand it, you face a choice. Do you continue to play the money game with full knowledge that it is just a game? Or do you drop out entirely? And this is where many awakened people get stuck. They think the answer is to reject money altogether, to become penniless wanderers. But this is just another trap. This is the ego in spiritual clothing. True awakening is not about rejecting money any more than it is about chasing it. It is about seeing money for what it actually is, a useful instrument, nothing more, nothing less. When you are truly awake, you can use money without being used by it. You can play the game without being played by the game. The question is not whether you should have money or not have money. The question is whether money has you. Can you hold it lightly? Can you use it when you need it and let it go when you do not? Can you make it without losing your soul and spend it without losing your freedom? This is the art. This is the dance. And it takes time to learn. This is why so many people who wake up go through a period of financial difficulty. They are learning to dance a new dance. They are discovering how to live in the world, but not be of it. They are finding out how to support themselves without selling themselves. And during this learning period, there will be struggles. The old ways of making money do not work anymore, because they required you to be asleep, to be driven by fear, to be motivated by greed. But the new ways have not yet revealed themselves. You are in the gap, the space between the old life and the new. And in this space there is often very little money. But listen carefully. This gap is sacred. This struggle is holy. You are not being punished. You are being transformed. The universe is not withholding abundance from you. It is teaching you a new relationship with abundance. Think of it this way. A snake must shed its old skin in order to grow. During the shedding process, it is vulnerable. Its old protection is falling away, and the new skin is not yet hardened. But if the snake tried to hold on to its old skin out of fear, it would die. It must go through the vulnerable period in order to grow into something larger. This is what is happening to you. Your old relationship with money, your old way of surviving in the world, it is falling away. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it is frightening. But if you try to cling to the old ways, if you try to go back to sleep just to feel financially secure, you will suffocate. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unsee what you have seen. The only way through is forward. The only way out is through. And on the other side of this difficulty, there is a new way of being in the world, a way that is both spiritually awake and financially functional, a way that allows you to have enough without needing to have everything, a way that allows you to work without making work your identity, a way that allows you to use money as a means without making it the end. But you have to trust the process. You have to have faith that the universe is not going to let you starve. After all, the birds do not have bank accounts, and yet they are fed. The flowers do not worry about their net worth, and yet they are clothed in beauty. If nature takes care of every sparrow, every blade of grass, will it not take care of you? This does not mean you sit back and do nothing. It does not mean you become irresponsible. It means you act from a different place. You act from love rather than fear. You work because the work is there to be done, not because you are trying to prove your worth. You earn money because money is useful, not because money is everything. And here is what I have observed. When people make this change, when they truly let go of the fear and start living from a place of trust, money often begins to flow more easily. Not always, not immediately, but eventually. Because when you are not grasping at money, when you are not strangling every opportunity with desperation, you become more creative. You become more relaxed. You become more attractive to work with, more pleasant to do business with, more open to possibilities. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. When you stop thrashing about trying to force financial success, when you stop panicking about every bill, when you simply allow yourself to be present with what is, something shifts. The water begins to clear, solutions appear, opportunities arise. Not because you are trying to make them happen, but because you have stopped blocking them with your anxiety. But let me be very clear about something. This does not mean you will become wealthy in the conventional sense. You may never have $1 million in the bank. You may never own a large house or a fancy car, and that is perfectly fine, because you will have something far more valuable. You will have your life back. You will have your time. You will have your peace. You will have yourself. The spiritually awake person eventually discovers that there are two kinds of poverty. There is the poverty of not having enough money, which is temporary and can be solved. And there is the poverty of selling your soul for money, which is permanent and can destroy you. Better to be broke for a season than to be rich and dead inside forever. And so here you are, spiritually awake and financially struggling. What do you do? First, you stop fighting it. You stop seeing your financial difficulty as evidence that something is wrong with you, or that God has abandoned you, or that you have failed. You see it for what it is, a transition period, a time of learning, a sacred passage from one way of being to another. Second, you do what you can do. You find work that does not violate your soul. You pay your bills as best you can. You live simply. You ask for help when you need it. There is no shame in this. The universe takes care of itself through people helping each other. Allow yourself to be helped. Third, you trust. You trust that you are exactly where you need to be. You trust that this difficulty has something to teach you. You trust that the same intelligence that grew your body from a single cell, that beats your heart without your effort, that breathes you while you sleep, this intelligence is not going to abandon you now. You are held. You are supported. You are loved, not by money, but by the source of all things. And finally, you remember what you have already learned. The meaning of life is not in having, or achieving, or accumulating. The meaning of life is in the living itself, in the breathing, in the seeing, in the tasting. You are already rich beyond measure if you would only stop long enough to notice. You have eyes that can see a sunset. You have ears that can hear music. You have a body that can feel the warmth of the sun. You have a mind that can know wonder. You have a heart that can feel love. These are the real treasures. These are what matter, and they cannot be bought or sold. So yes, you may be broke, but you are awake. And that awakening is worth more than all the money in all the banks, in all the world. Because money can buy you many things, but it cannot buy you consciousness. It cannot buy you freedom. It cannot buy you the peace of knowing who you really are. You are not a person who has or does not have money. You are the awareness in which having and not having appear and disappear like clouds in the sky. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains. You are the sky, and the sky is never poor, never lacking, never in need. This does not pay the rent, I know. But it changes everything about how you relate to the rent. It means you can face financial difficulty without losing yourself. It means you can be broke without being broken. It means you can struggle without despair, because you know that your worth is not measured in dollars, and your life is not defined by your bank balance. The spiritually awake are often financially struggling not because they are being punished, but because they are learning something the sleeping world has forgotten. They are learning that life is not about money. They are learning that the real wealth is consciousness itself. They are learning that you can live richly on very little if you are awake enough to see the abundance that is already here. This learning takes time. This learning costs something. Sometimes what it costs is money. But what you gain in return is invaluable. You gain your soul. You gain your freedom. You gain the ability to live in this world without being consumed by it. You gain the wisdom to use money without being used by it. And eventually, in ways you cannot predict and according to a timeline you cannot control, the financial situation often begins to improve. Not because you go back to sleep and start chasing money again, but because you have learned to be awake and functional at the same time. You have learned to meet the practical demands of life without forgetting the spiritual truth of life. But even if the money never comes, even if you live your whole life with very little, you will still be wealthier than those who have everything but know nothing. Because you know who you are. You know what matters. You know that you are the universe, looking at itself through these particular eyes, breathing itself through these particular lungs, experiencing itself through this particular life. And that, my friends, is the real gold. Everything else is just paper. So if you are spiritually awake, and financially struggling, take heart. You are not doing it wrong. You are going through what must be gone through. Trust the process. Do what you can. And remember always that the one who is struggling is not who you really are. The real you, the awareness that watches all of this, cannot be touched by poverty or wealth. It simply is, and it is enough. The meaning of life is just to be alive. Not to be rich, not to be successful, not to prove anything or achieve anything or accumulate anything. Just to be alive, to breathe, to see, to feel, to know. And this you are already doing. This you have always been doing. This you cannot fail to do. So play the game of money if you must. Pay your bills, feed yourself, take care.
When a person begins to notice what others overlook, there is at first a kind of thrill. It feels like lifting a veil, like peering behind the stage into the machinery of the play. Suddenly, what seems solid and unquestionable is revealed to be shifting, relative, even dreamlike. Yet along with this exhilaration comes a quieter, heavier sensation, the realization that most people do not see and perhaps do not wish to. What you thought would be a shared discovery is instead a private burden. You may try to explain, to put into words, the insight that has dawned on you, but the language falls flat, and those you speak to blink as though you are speaking in riddles. It is as if you are pointing at the moon and they only see your finger. The danger of seeing what others do not is not so much that you are wrong, but that you are alone. Human beings are social creatures, and belonging is as essential as food or air. When the crowd looks one way and you are gazing in another, there is a current of unease. To be the only one who notices the emperor's new clothes is not merely a story about honesty, but about the peril of being out of step with the group. We draw safety from consensus, from the feeling that if everyone agrees, then it must be so. But the moment you glimpse something that contradicts the agreement, you find yourself at odds with the very fabric that holds people together. There is also the danger of arrogance. To see what others do not can feed the subtle belief that you are superior, that your vision grants you a special status. But this quickly becomes its own trap. For the moment you define yourself as the enlightened one, you have merely built a new wall between you and the rest. What began as a discovery dissolves into pride, and pride always isolates. The vision itself may have been clear, but the self that grasps it turns cloudy. In trying to hold on, you lose the very freedom you had glimpsed. Think of a child who suddenly understands a joke before anyone else in the room. They laugh aloud, expecting others to join, but the silence that greets them feels cold. The joy of recognition becomes embarrassment. In that instant, they learn that timing matters, that understanding out of sync with others can sting. Adults feel the same sting, though it wears the clothing of philosophy, religion, or insight. To wake up while others are still dreaming is not always a triumph. It can be profoundly lonely. And yet, what is it that we see when we see differently? Often, it is the fleeting nature of things, the fragility of what others call permanent. We notice that money, power, reputation, all the idols of society are as insubstantial as smoke. We notice that the roles people cling to with such intensity are costumes that will be dropped sooner or later. We notice that beneath the noise of ambition and fear, there is a silence, an openness that does not strive at all. To see this is to see through the game. And once you see through it, you cannot play it with the same seriousness again. But the others continue, earnest and intent, and your laughter sounds to them like madness. This is why so many teachers, poets, and mystics have spoken of exile. Not always a literal banishment, but a subtle one, the sense of not fitting, of being slightly out of tune with the orchestra around you. The music plays, but you hear a dissonance others ignore. And when you point it out, the players insist that everything is fine. You begin to wonder if you are the one out of tune, if the clarity that once felt liberating is instead a form of delusion. The mind wavers between certainty and doubt, and both carry their own weight. But consider that every vision, every new perception in history has always begun with someone who saw differently. The danger of seeing what others do not is real, but it is also the seed of transformation. Still, in the beginning, it feels like standing at the edge of a vast forest while the village insists the world ends at the meadow. You want to describe the trees, the shadows, the depth of the woods, but to them it sounds like fantasy. And so you stand with one foot in the known and one foot in the unknown, belonging fully to neither. This is the tension. To carry in your heart a glimpse of something wider, something truer, while moving among people who are content with their smaller maps. The danger is not only that they will misunderstand you, but that you will begin to misunderstand yourself. To doubt the vision, or to inflate it, or to guard it so fiercely that it becomes brittle, you may try to smother it, to return to ordinary sleep. But the dream of the world never fits again once you have seen beyond it. You may try to proclaim it loudly, but the louder you shout, the less others hear. And so you walk with it quietly, unsure whether it is a blessing or a curse. There is also fear, the kind of fear that whispers, if I let go of what the crowd believes, where will I belong? For belief is not merely a private act. It is the glue of societies, families, friendships. To question it is to risk unraveling bonds that feel necessary for survival. And so many who see hesitate to admit it, even to themselves. They carry the vision like a secret flame, shielding it from the wind of public opinion, never certain if they're protecting it or themselves. The danger is isolation, the danger is misunderstanding, the danger is pride, but beneath all of these, the deepest danger is that you will forget how to laugh. To take your vision so gravely that you become rigid, cut off not only from others, but from the very life that showed you this glimpse in the first place. This is why many who awaken fall into despair before they find peace. It is the dark night of seeing what others do not. It is not enough to notice the illusion. The greater challenge is to live with that noticing, to carry it gracefully among those who are still entranced. To be in the world but not of it, as some traditions put it, is not a slogan but a daily balancing act. And until that balance is found, the gift of sight can feel like a curse. For to walk in two worlds at once is never comfortable. And yet, what seems at first to be a curse reveals itself, with time, to be the very doorway into freedom. The loneliness of seeing differently is only sharp when you imagine that you must convince others that your vision has to be validated by the crowd to be real. The moment you let go of that demand, the burden softens. For truth is not dependent upon recognition, and awareness does not become less itself because it is unnoticed. The sky does not stop being the sky when clouds cover it, and the ocean does not cease to be the ocean when no ship sails its surface. In the same way, what you have seen remains what it is, whether or not another agrees. The resolution, then, is not to return to sleep, nor to shout at the dreamers, but to walk lightly, to live what you have seen without needing applause. When you understand that the world is play, that life is a dance, you can smile at the earnestness of those still caught in the game without condemning them. You see that their seriousness, their striving and fear are also part of the whole, just as your laughter and insight are. The one who sees is not apart from those who do not see, but an expression of the same reality, taking on a different mask. This changes the flavor of your vision. What was once heavy becomes light. The awareness that isolated you begins to connect you more deeply. For now you recognize that those who do not see are not wrong. They are simply playing another part in the cosmic performance. Without them, there would be no contrast, no stage upon which your own role makes sense, Just as music requires silence, just as light requires shadow, the clarity of sight requires the backdrop of blindness. The difference does not divide, but completes. Think of the flower blooming in a field. It does not demand that the grasses beside it also bloom in the same way. It simply unfolds, radiates, expresses its nature. And in doing so, it contributes to the whole field, not by making others like itself, but by being precisely what it island. So too with the one who sees. The task is not to reform the world into your vision, but to live your vision as naturally as the flower blooms. In that authenticity, you become nourishment for others, whether they realize it or not. And sometimes, without effort, others notice. A word you speak casually, a silence you embody, a lightness in your presence, these become sparks that awaken curiosity. But even if they do not, nothing is lost. The play continues, the dance unfolds, and your part is no less vital because it is unrecognized. The true gift of seeing differently is not superiority, but freedom. You are no longer bound by the unquestioned rules of the game. You may play them if you wish, for the joy of it, but you are not deceived into thinking the outcome is final. You may step back when the game grows tedious, laugh when others are grim, and rest when others are restless. This freedom is subtle, but it changes everything. For when you are no longer driven by the compulsion to prove, you discover a gentleness that can embrace all. Even the danger that once haunted you of being alone, of being misunderstood, becomes part of the comedy. You see that every prophet, every poet, every thinker who glimpsed beyond the ordinary faced the same fate. And yet their words carried through time, not because they fought the blindness of their contemporaries, but because they simply sang their song. And so the invitation is not to fight, but to sing. To let your vision express itself in whatever way it wishes, whether in speech, in silence, in action, or in stillness. In this way, the danger dissolves into play. The one who sees and the one who does not are both the universe in disguise. There is no real separation, no real opposition. What looked like alienation is in fact another face of intimacy. For to be the only one awake in a room of sleepers is still to share the same room, the same night, the same dream. The laughter you carry, though quiet, is still part of the whole sound. And so, you may rest, you may see without clinging, you may walk without boasting, you may love without demanding agreement. The vision you carry is not a weapon, not a burden, not even a possession. It is simply the light by which you move, as natural as breathing, as effortless as being. And in time, you may even forget that you are different, for the difference no longer defines you. You are not the seer against the blind, but the whole itself, playing at many levels of awareness, all equally necessary, all equally divine. And perhaps the most subtle shift of all is this. What once seemed like your private vision begins to reveal itself as nothing personal at all. The sight that you carry is not your possession, not an achievement of the mind, but the universe opening its own eyes through you. In that moment, even the idea of seeing differently softens, for you recognize that all seeing belongs to the same awareness. The distinction between those who see and those who do not becomes less sharp, more playful, like the changing of roles in a play where each actor takes their turn under the spotlight. Consider the ocean again, with its endless waves. Some waves rise high, glistening in the sun, while others barely ripple upon the surface. To the eye, they seem distinct, greater or lesser, bold or quiet. But to the ocean, they are one movement, inseparable. The wave that sees its own crest does not look down upon the trough. It knows both of the same water. So it is with the one who glimpses beyond the usual illusion. Not superior, not apart, but simply aware that all are movements of the same depth. This awareness gives birth to compassion, For when you no longer feel compelled to drag others into your vision, you can love them as they are. The seriousness with which they chase their ambitions, the fears they nurse, the dramas they play out, all of it becomes endearing, as though you were watching children at play. Not condescension, but tenderness, because you recognize yourself in them. You too once played those games in full sincerity, and perhaps you still do, for even the awakened must sometimes forget in order to live. Forgetting is part of remembering, blindness is part of sight, and so you walk more gently, you listen more patiently, you smile more easily. The vision you carry ceases to be a sharp edge dividing you from others, and becomes instead a soft light by which you move among them. You are not required to convince or convert, only to live in such a way that your very being whispers of a freedom beyond striving. That whisper, whether heard or not, belongs to the music of the whole. Notice also how the danger dissolves when you see that what you feared isolation was never truly there. The feeling of being apart arose only when you believed that awareness belonged to you, that you were a solitary flame among darkness. But the flame was never yours. It is the fire of existence itself, and it burns in every heart, whether seen or unseen. You cannot be apart from it, any more than a drop of water can fall outside the sea. The very sense of separation was part of the illusion you were meant to see through. And what then remains? A deep ease, a kind of trust. You do not need to calculate how others will respond, or whether your insight will be accepted. You simply live, and in that living the truth finds its own expression. Sometimes it will flower visibly, sometimes it will lie hidden beneath the soil, but the life of it continues, regardless. You no longer demand outcomes, because you no longer confuse outcomes with reality. Reality is here already, shimmering in each moment, and you are not apart from it. This is why many who see differently eventually become playful again. They laugh more, they sing, they enjoy the simple things. For when the burden of proving and defending falls away, what remains is the joy of being, and that joy is contagious in ways words never are. People may not understand your philosophy, but they feel your presence. They may not follow your reasoning, but they sense your ease, and in time, that ease does more than any argument could. So perhaps the true resolution is not to stand above or apart, but to rejoin the play consciously, to move among others not as a stranger, but as a companion who knows the dream is a dream and still delights in its colors. To take part in the laughter and the tears, not because you are deceived, but because you recognize them as the texture of the whole. In this way, seeing what others do not ceases to be a danger at all. It becomes a gift, not only to you, but to everyone around you, even if they never realize it. And as the words slow and the reflection settles, perhaps you can sense the spaciousness in which all of this unfolds. The danger, the vision, the loneliness, the joy, all of it rising and falling, like breath, like waves, like the endless turning of the earth. To see is simply to notice this movement. To live is to be this movement, and to rest is to allow it all, without resistance, without demand, without fear.
There's a peculiar phenomenon that occurs in human consciousness, and most people go through their entire lives without ever recognizing it. It's so fundamental, so pervasive, that it becomes invisible, like the air we breathe or the water a fish swims in. And that phenomenon is this: nearly everything you do, nearly every decision you make, nearly every word you speak is filtered through a question that runs constantly in the background of your mind. That question is, what will they think of me? Now, you may not consciously ask this question. In fact, you probably believe you're acting independently, making your own choices, living your own life. But observe yourself carefully. Watch yourself in conversation. Notice how you choose your words, how you modulate your voice, how you present your opinions. Notice how much energy you expend trying to create a particular impression, trying to manage how others perceive you. This need for approval begins early, of course. As children, we quickly learn that our survival depends on pleasing the adults around us. A baby cries and mother comes. This is the first lesson in cause and effect, in the power of gaining another's attention and approval. As we grow, the pattern becomes more sophisticated. We learn to smile at the right moments, to say the things that earn praise, to hide the parts of ourselves that meet with disapproval or punishment. And gradually, imperceptibly, we construct a false self, a performing self, a self that exists primarily in the eyes of others. The tragedy is that we forget this is what we're doing. We identify completely with this performing self and mistake it for who we really are. We become so skilled at the performance that we no longer know where the performance ends and our authentic being begins, if indeed there's anything left of that authentic being at all. Now, what I want to talk about today is what happens when you stop this exhausting performance. What happens when you cease to seek the approval of others. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by this, because it's easily misunderstood. I'm not talking about becoming rude or inconsiderate. I'm not suggesting you should deliberately offend people or disregard their feelings. I'm not advocating for selfish behavior or cruelty. What I'm talking about is something far more subtle and far more profound. I'm talking about the moment when you stop organizing your entire existence around the question of whether others approve of you. This is a revolutionary shift in consciousness, because when you're constantly seeking approval, you're not really living your own life, you're living a kind of reflection of what you imagine others want you to be. And the exhausting thing is that these others are themselves seeking approval. So you're trying to please people who are trying to please people who are trying to please people, in an endless hall of mirrors where nobody is actually home. Let me describe what this approval-seeking looks like in practice. You're at a gathering, and someone asks your opinion about something, politics, religion, art, whatever it might be. Now, if you're honest with yourself, you'll notice that before you answer, there's a split-second calculation. You're quickly assessing the room, trying to determine what opinion will make you look good, what answer will earn respect or agreement or admiration. You're not asking yourself what you actually think. You're asking yourself what you should say to create the desired impression. Or consider your work, your career. How much of what you do is genuinely interesting to you, and how much is performed for the approval of employers, colleagues, society at large? How many people are in careers they don't enjoy, living lives that don't fit them, all because they're trying to meet someone else's expectations, parents, perhaps, or some abstract notion of success that they've absorbed from their culture? Or look at relationships. How often do people stay in friendships or romantic partnerships, not because these relationships nourish them, but because leaving would invite disapproval? How much suffering is endured? How much authenticity is sacrificed, all to avoid the judgment of others? The need for approval is a kind of prison. And like most prisons, it's largely invisible to those trapped inside it. You don't see the bars because you've been looking through them your whole life. They've become part of the landscape, part of the assumed structure of reality. But here's what's extraordinary. The moment you recognize this prison, the moment you truly see it for what it is, something begins to shift. And the moment you stop seeking approval, not as a rebellious act, not as a way of proving something, but simply because you see the futility and exhaustion of it, everything changes. Let me tell you what I mean by everything changes. First, you discover who you actually are. Not who you think you should be, not who others want you to be, but who you actually are beneath all the layers of performance and pretense. And this discovery is often surprising, because the authentic self is quite different from the performing self. The authentic self has different interests, different values, different desires than the self you've been presenting to the world. The authentic self might enjoy things you've been pretending not to enjoy. It might be drawn to paths you've been avoiding because they didn't seem respectable or impressive enough. It might have opinions that don't fit neatly into the categories that would win approval. When you stop seeking approval, you give yourself permission to discover these things. You can finally ask yourself, what do I actually enjoy? What actually interests me? What do I actually think about this? Not what should I enjoy, or what would make me look intelligent to think, but what's actually true for me. This is tremendously liberating, because you've been carrying around all these shoulds and oughts, all these ideas about who you're supposed to be, and suddenly you can put them down. You can stop performing. You can stop managing your image. You can simply be. Now, when this happens, something remarkable occurs in your relationships with others. The people who were drawn to your performing self, the people who approved of you as long as you played the role they wanted you to play, these people tend to fall away, and this can be painful. You may lose friendships, even family relationships. People may express disappointment, confusion, even anger. You've changed, they'll say, often with a tone of accusation. And it's true, you have changed. Or rather, you've stopped pretending. You've stopped contorting yourself to fit their expectations. And they experience this as betrayal, because in a sense you've broken an unspoken contract. The contract was, I'll approve of you as long as you continue to be the person I want you to be. But here's what's extraordinary. At the same time that some relationships fall away, others deepen. Because when you stop performing, when you stop seeking approval, you become authentic. And authenticity has a magnetic quality. People who are themselves seeking authenticity, who are tired of superficial relationships and social games, are drawn to it. You begin to attract people who appreciate you for who you actually are, not for the mask you wear. And these relationships are profoundly different from approval-based relationships. They're based on genuine recognition, on actually seeing and being seen. They're nourishing rather than exhausting, because you're not constantly working to maintain an image. You can relax, you can be yourself. Moreover, when you stop seeking approval, you stop being manipulable. Think about how much of advertising, politics, social pressure operates through the mechanism of approval and disapproval. Buy this product and you'll be admired. Adopt this opinion and you'll be respected. Behave this way and you'll fit in. The entire machinery of social control depends on people desperately seeking approval. When you're no longer seeking approval, this machinery loses its power over you. You can't be controlled through shame or the promise of status. You are free to make decisions based on what's actually true for you, what actually serves your well-being and the well-being of others, rather than what will earn you gold stars from some authority or peer group. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to others. In fact, paradoxically, when you stop seeking approval, you often become more genuinely considerate. Because consideration that comes from seeking approval is really just another form of manipulation. You're being nice because you want something in return, even if what you want is just a positive opinion. But consideration that comes from simply recognizing others as fellow beings, not as sources of approval or disapproval, is authentic kindness. Now, I want to talk about the fear that arises when you contemplate stopping the approval-seeking behavior. Because there is fear, tremendous fear. The mind presents you with catastrophic scenarios. If I stop trying to please people, I'll be alone. I'll be rejected. I'll be cast out. I'll lose everything. And there's a reason for this fear. It goes back to our evolutionary history, to a time when being cast out of the tribe meant death. To be alone was to be vulnerable to predators, to starvation, to the elements. So the fear of disapproval is ancient and deep. It feels like a matter of survival. But here's what you must understand. That ancient fear is no longer relevant in the way it once was. You're not going to die if some people disapprove of you. You're not going to be cast out into the wilderness to face predators. The worst that can happen is that some people won't like you. And when you really examine this, when you really look at the prospect of some people not liking you, you realize it's not actually catastrophic. In fact, it's inevitable. No matter what you do, no matter how much you perform, some people won't like you anyway. There's a wonderful freedom in accepting this. Some people won't like you, and that's perfectly fine. You don't need universal approval. You don't need everyone to think well of you. You just need to live authentically and find the people who resonate with that authenticity. Let me share something from my own experience. For many years, particularly in my younger days, I was enormously concerned with what people thought of me. as someone interested in philosophy and religion, as someone who eventually became a teacher of sorts, I was constantly aware of my reputation. I wanted to be respected, to be taken seriously, to be admired for my knowledge and insight. And this concern shaped everything I did. It shaped what I wrote, what I said in lectures, even how I dressed and spoke. I was performing the role of the wise teacher, the knowledgeable philosopher. And it was exhausting, though I didn't fully recognize how exhausting until something shifted. The shift came gradually. Through my study of Zen, through my own meditation practice, through simply growing older and wearier of the performance, I began to care less about approval. I began to say what I actually thought rather than what would sound impressive. I began to admit when I didn't know something rather than pretending to knowledge I didn't have. I began to laugh at myself, to show my flaws and uncertainties. And do you know what happened? Some people were indeed disappointed. Some people decided I wasn't as wise as they'd thought, wasn't worthy of respect after all. But others, and these were the people who mattered, appreciated the authenticity. They found it refreshing. They felt they could finally relate to me as a human being rather than as an image or an authority. More importantly, I felt free. I could breathe. I could explore ideas without worrying whether they were respectable. I could admit confusion, doubt, not knowing. I could simply be myself, with all my contradictions and imperfections. And this freedom was worth infinitely more than any approval I'd been seeking. Now, let me speak about what happens in that moment when you stop seeking approval. And I do mean a moment, though it's also a process. There's often a specific moment of recognition, a shift in consciousness, where you suddenly see the whole game clearly. You see how much energy you've been expending on managing others' opinions. You see how futile it is, how exhausting, how it keeps you from actually living. In that moment, something drops away. The burden drops away. And there's a tremendous lightness, a sense of relief. It's as if you've been carrying a heavy load up a mountain your whole life, and suddenly you realize you can put it down. Nobody actually requires you to carry it. You were carrying it only because you thought you had to. This doesn't mean the old patterns instantly disappear. The habit of seeking approval is deeply ingrained. You'll still catch yourself doing it. Still notice that split-second calculation before you speak. Still feel that pang of anxiety when someone disapproves. But now you see it happening. You're aware of it. And awareness itself begins to dissolve the pattern. You start to notice, there it is again. I was about to modify what I was going to say because I was worried about what they'd think. And in noticing it, you have a choice. You can continue with the modification, or you can take a breath and say what you actually mean. Each time you choose authenticity over approval seeking, the pattern weakens a little more. And as the pattern weakens, everything does shift. Your relationships shift, as I've described. Your work shifts. You may find yourself drawn to different kinds of work, or approaching your current work in a different way. Your daily experience shifts because you're no longer expending so much energy on impression management. You have energy available for actually experiencing life, for being present, for engaging genuinely with whatever arises. Even your sense of self shifts. Because when you're constantly seeking approval, your sense of self is fundamentally unstable. It depends on others' opinions, which are changeable and often contradictory. One person approves, another disapproves, and you're torn between them, not knowing who you are. But when you stop seeking approval, you discover a more stable sense of self, not a fixed, permanent self, but a sense of being that doesn't depend on external validation. This is what the Eastern traditions have been pointing to all along. The Taoists speak of Wu Wei, effortless action, acting from your true nature rather than from learned patterns and social conditioning. The Buddhists speak of dropping the ego, which is largely composed of these approval-seeking patterns and the images we present to others. The Hindus speak of discovering the Atman, the true self, beneath all the layers of social identity. When you stop seeking approval, you're not becoming a different person. You're stopping being all the false persons you've been pretending to be. You're allowing what you actually are to emerge and express itself naturally. Now, I want to address a question that often arises, but don't we need some social harmony? Don't we need to consider others? Won't everyone just become selfish and inconsiderate if they stop caring what others think? This question misunderstands what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting you become indifferent to others' well-being. I'm not advocating for selfish disregard of how your actions affect people. What I'm saying is that you can be genuinely considerate without seeking approval. In fact, approval seeking often makes people less genuinely considerate because they're focused on managing impressions rather than actually being present with others. Real consideration comes from empathy, from recognizing others as conscious beings like yourself, from naturally wanting to act in ways that don't cause unnecessary harm. This has nothing to do with seeking approval and everything to do with basic human decency and awareness. Moreover, much of what passes for social harmony is really just collective pretense. Everyone performing for everyone else. Nobody saying what they actually think or feel, all carefully maintaining acceptable facades. This isn't genuine harmony, it's a kind of mutual deception. Real harmony, real community can only be built on authenticity. It requires people who are willing to be real with each other, even when that's uncomfortable. So when you stop seeking approval, you're not destroying the possibility of genuine relationship and community. You're creating it. You're inviting others into authentic connection rather than the shadow play of social performance. Let me end with this. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you begin to live. Not the life you think you should live, not the life others want you to live, but your actual life. The one that's been waiting for you all along, beneath all the performance and pretense. And when you begin to live this life, you discover something wonderful. You discover that you're enough. Not perfect, you'll still have flaws, still make mistakes, still have struggles and uncertainties, but you're enough. You don't need anyone's approval to validate your existence. You're already valid. You were always valid. You just couldn't see it while you were so busy trying to earn what you already had. This is the great shift, from seeking to being, from performing to simply existing, from the exhausting effort of trying to become acceptable to the profound peace of recognizing that you already are. This is freedom. This is what it means to finally come home to yourself. Thank you. You know, there's something quite extraordinary about the way we construct our sense of self. From the moment we begin to develop self-awareness as children, we start telling ourselves stories about who we are. And these stories, these narratives about our identity, become so deeply embedded, so thoroughly believed, that we never think to question them. We take them as absolute truth, as unchangeable facts about our nature. But here's what I want to suggest to you today. The most fundamental stories you tell yourself about who you are, the bedrock assumptions upon which you've built your entire sense of identity, are lies. Not malicious lies, not deliberate deceptions, but profound misunderstandings about the nature of your being. And these three lies, these three fundamental illusions, keep you trapped in patterns of suffering, limitation, and endless seeking. The extraordinary thing is that everyone believes these same three lies. They're universal delusions, passed down through culture, reinforced by society, embedded in language itself. And until you see through them, until you recognize them as the fictions they are, you remain imprisoned by them, living a life that's fundamentally based on falsehood. So let me tell you about these three lies. And as I describe them, I want you to watch your own reaction. Because the ego, the false self that's built on these lies, will immediately try to defend them. It will say, no, these aren't lies, this is just how things are. This is reality. And that defensive reaction is itself evidence of how deeply these lies have been believed. The first lie, and this is the foundation upon which the other two rest, is the lie that you are separate, that you are an isolated entity, a separate self, fundamentally divided from everything else that exists. You believe you are in here, behind your eyes, inside your skin, and the world is out there, separate from you, something you observe and interact with, but are fundamentally apart from. Now, on the surface, this seems obvious, doesn't it? Of course you're separate. You have your own body, your own thoughts, your own experiences. When you feel pain, others don't feel it. When you think, others don't hear your thoughts. The boundary of your skin seems to clearly mark where you end and not you begins. How could this possibly be a lie? But let me ask you something. Where exactly do you end and the rest of the universe begins? You might say at your skin, but your skin is constantly exchanging molecules with the air. You're breathing in oxygen that was produced by trees, breathing out carbon dioxide that trees will use. The atoms in your body right now were once part of stars, part of the earth, part of countless other organisms. The food you ate yesterday is literally becoming you today. The bacteria in your gut, without which you couldn't survive, are they part of you or separate from you? You see, the boundary is completely arbitrary. It's a convention, a useful fiction, but not an actual division in reality. You are not a separate thing interacting with the universe. You are what the entire universe is doing at the point called here and now. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, but is the ocean waving, you are not separate from existence, but are existence expressing itself in this particular form, at this particular location, in this particular moment. But we've been conditioned from the earliest age to believe in separation. We're given a name, and we start to identify with that name as if it's what we are. We're told you and me and them, and language itself reinforces the illusion of separation with every sentence. We're taught to see ourselves as separate individuals, competing with other separate individuals for resources, for success, for love, for survival. And this lie of separation is the root of almost all suffering. Because when you believe you're separate, you're constantly defending your territory, protecting your interests, trying to get what you need from a world that seems foreign to you. You experience loneliness because you believe you're genuinely isolated. You experience fear because you're vulnerable, a small separate thing in a vast universe that doesn't care about you. You experience alienation because you never quite feel at home in a world you think you're separate from. But the moment you see through this lie, everything changes. Not because you gain something new, but because you lose an old delusion. You realize you've never been separate. You've never been alone. You've never been isolated. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are existence knowing itself. The division was imaginary. The separation was a story. And without that story, what remains is a sense of profound connection, of being at home everywhere, of belonging to everything. Now, the second lie builds directly on the first. This is the lie that you are consistent, that there's a continuous, unchanging you that persists through time. You believe there's a stable self, a constant identity that was there when you were 5 years old, is here now, and will be there when you're 80. You think of yourself as a thing, a noun, an entity that endures through all the changes of life. But is this actually true? Are you the same person you were 10 years ago? Are your thoughts the same? Your beliefs? Your body? Every cell in your body has been replaced multiple times over. Your opinions have changed. Your preferences have evolved. Your memories of your past have been rewritten countless times. So where is this continuous self? What you call yourself is actually a process, not a thing. It's a verb, not a noun. You are not a being, you are being. You're not a self, you're selfing. There's a continuous flow of experience, of sensation, of thought, of feeling, but there's no solid, unchanging entity having these experiences. There's just the experiencing itself. Think about it this way. When you look at a river, you give it a name. You call it the Mississippi or the Thames or the Ganges. But is it really the same river from moment to moment? The water that's flowing past you now will be miles away in an hour. New water is constantly flowing in. The river is never the same from one moment to the next. And yet we speak of it as if it's a single, continuous thing. You are like that river. You're a flowing process of thoughts, sensations, experiences, constantly changing, never the same from moment to moment. But you've been taught to think of yourself as a thing, as a solid entity, as a consistent self. And this lie creates enormous problems, because when you believe you're a fixed self, you become attached to particular ideas about who you are. You say, I am this kind of person. I am not that kind of person. And these definitions become a prison. You can't change, can't grow, can't become something new, because that would threaten your sense of identity. You have to defend who you think you are against any evidence that contradicts it. Moreover, this lie creates the illusion that you're in control of yourself. You think there's a you, a central controller, a captain of the ship, making decisions and running the show. But if you observe carefully, you'll notice that thoughts arise on their own. Feelings happen. Decisions emerge from conditions you didn't choose. There is no separate controller. There's just the process happening. And then thought comes in afterward and claims credit for it, saying, I did that, I thought that, I decided that. When you see through this second lie, when you recognize that you're a process rather than a thing, there's an incredible freedom. You're no longer trapped by outdated ideas about who you are. You're no longer burdened by the need to defend a consistent self-image. You're free to change, to flow, to be different in different circumstances. You realize you're not playing a fixed character in the drama of life. You're the drama itself, constantly improvising, constantly new. And now we come to the third lie, and this one is perhaps the most insidious. This is the lie that you are inadequate, that there's something wrong with you, that you need to become someone or something other than what you are, to be acceptable, to be worthy, to be complete. This lie is woven into the very fabric of our civilization. From the moment you're born, you're being measured, evaluated, judged. Are you developing properly? Are you meeting the milestones? Are you good enough? Smart enough? Attractive enough? Successful enough? The message is constant and clear. As you are right now, you're not quite right. You need to improve, to achieve, to become better. The entire economy runs on this lie. Advertising works by creating a sense of lack. You're not attractive enough, but buy this product and you will be. You're not successful enough, but get this degree, this job, this house, and you will be. You're not happy enough, but consume this experience, this substance, this entertainment, and you will be. The underlying message is always the same. You're not okay as you are, but if you do this or acquire that, then you'll finally be acceptable. Religion often reinforces this lie in different clothing. You're a sinner, you're fallen, you're separate from the divine, but if you follow these rules, perform these rituals, believe these doctrines, then you might become worthy. Even much of what passes for spirituality today is based on this same lie. You're not enlightened, you're not awakened, you're not conscious enough. But if you meditate enough, practice enough, purify enough, then you might finally become what you should be. But here's the truth that nobody wants you to know. You are already complete. You are already whole. There is nothing wrong with you. There never has been. The sense of inadequacy, the feeling that something is missing, the belief that you need to become something other than what you are, this is the lie. It's a fiction that's been implanted in you by a society that needs you to feel inadequate, so you'll keep striving, keep consuming, keep chasing. Now, I can already hear the objection. You might say, but I do have problems. I do have issues I need to work on. I do need to grow and improve. How can you say there's nothing wrong with me? And this is where we have to be very careful to understand what I'm actually saying. I'm not saying you can't learn new skills. I'm not saying you shouldn't address harmful behaviors. I'm not saying growth and development don't happen. What I'm saying is that at the fundamental level of your being, at the core of what you actually are, there is no inadequacy. The sense that you're fundamentally flawed, that at your core you're not good enough, this is the lie. You are an expression of existence itself. You are what the universe is doing right here, right now. And existence doesn't make mistakes. A tree doesn't worry that it's not a good enough tree. A river doesn't feel inadequate about its flowing. A bird doesn't doubt its worth. They simply are what they are, completely, fully, without self-consciousness or self-doubt. But human beings have developed this peculiar capacity for self-reflection, and we've used it to create an idea of what we should be, and then we've compared our actual experience to this idea, and we found ourselves wanting. We've created an ideal self, a perfect version we think we should be, and then we've felt bad about not being that. But the ideal is imaginary. It's a concept. It's not real. What's real is what you actually are in in this moment. And what you actually are is the universe experiencing itself in human form. You are existence knowing itself. You are life living itself. And that is already completely sufficient, completely whole, completely acceptable. Not because you've achieved something, not because you've earned it, but because that's simply what is. When you see through this third lie, when you recognize that the sense of inadequacy is just a story you've been told and have believed, something remarkable happens. You stop the endless striving to become acceptable. You stop postponing your okayness until some future achievement. You recognize that you're already it. You've always been it. You couldn't be anything else. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to improve yourself to become acceptable, when you stop operating from a fundamental sense of lack, that's when real growth becomes possible. Not growth driven by fear and inadequacy, but growth that happens naturally, organically, like a plant growing toward the sun. Not because the seed is inadequate, but because growth is what life does. Now, here's what's important to understand about these three lives. They're interconnected. They support each other. The lie of separation makes you feel isolated and vulnerable. The lie of being a fixed self makes you rigid and defensive. The lie of inadequacy makes you constantly chase after something you think you lack. Together, they create a false sense of identity, what we might call the ego, that's constantly struggling, constantly defending, constantly seeking. And this false self, this ego, built on lies, consumes enormous amounts of energy. It requires constant maintenance, constant reinforcement, constant protection. You have to defend your separateness, maintain your self-image, prove your adequacy. It's exhausting. It's like trying to dam a river. The natural flow of life is wholeness, change, and completeness. But you're constantly expending energy to maintain the illusions of separation, fixity, and lack. But you can't simply decide to stop believing these lies. The ego can't enlighten itself. The false self can't see through its own falsehood. What's required is a different kind of seeing, a shift in awareness that happens not through effort but through relaxation, not through becoming but through recognizing what already is. This is why all the great spiritual traditions, beneath their different forms and languages, point at the same thing. They're all inviting you to see through these fundamental lies. The Buddhist talks about the illusion of the separate self. The Hindu speaks of recognizing your identity with Brahman, with all that is. The Taoist describes flowing with the way things are rather than fighting against life. Jesus spoke of dying to be reborn, of losing your life to find it. They're all pointing at the same recognition. These stories you've believed about yourself, these fundamental assumptions about your nature are not true. And when these lies are seen through, when these illusions dissolve, what remains? Not nothing, not some void or blank emptiness. What remains is what was always there beneath the lies. Simple presence, pure awareness, being itself. You don't become something special. You recognize what you've always been. You don't achieve some extraordinary state. You wake up to the ordinary reality that was hidden by extraordinary delusions. Let me be very practical about this. How do these lies operate in your daily life, and how does seeing through them change your experience? Take the lie of separation. When you believe you're separate, every interaction is a transaction between isolated entities. Relationships become negotiations. You're trying to get what you need from others while protecting yourself from being hurt. There's always this subtle guardedness, this sense of being on one side of a boundary while everyone else is on the other side. But when you see through the lie of separation, relationships transform. You recognize that you're meeting yourself in different forms. The boundary between self and other becomes transparent. There's still the appearance of separateness, still different bodies and personalities, but there's an underlying recognition of unity. Compassion becomes natural because hurting another is recognized as hurting yourself. Love stops being about getting something from someone and becomes about recognizing what you share. Consider the lie of being a fixed self. When you believe you're a consistent, unchanging entity, you become rigid. You have to defend your self-image, your reputation, your identity. If someone criticizes you, it threatens who you think you are. If circumstances change, you resist because it threatens your stability. You're constantly trying to control life to protect this imaginary stable self. But when you see through this lie, there's incredible flexibility. You can be different in different situations without feeling like you're being false. You can change your mind without feeling like you're betraying yourself. You can accept criticism without it devastating you because you're not identified with a fixed self that could be damaged. You become like water, taking the shape of whatever container you're in, yet always remaining essentially water. And the lie of inadequacy, this one affects every aspect of your life. When you believe you're fundamentally lacking, you're always striving, always seeking, always trying to fill the void. You pursue achievements hoping they'll make you feel worthy. You chase experiences hoping they'll make you feel fulfilled. You seek approval from others hoping it will validate your existence. But nothing ever quite works because you're trying to fill an imaginary hole. When you see through this lie, the striving stops. Not because you become lazy or passive, but because the desperate quality drops away. You still take action, still have preferences, still pursue things, but not from a place of lack. There's a sense of already being fulfilled, and actions arise from that fullness rather than from trying to fill an emptiness. Life becomes play rather than struggle. Now I want to address something important. You might be listening to all this and thinking, okay, I understand intellectually, I can see how these might be lies, but I still experience myself as separate, as a continuous self, as inadequate. How do I stop believing these lies? And this is the crucial point. You can't stop believing them through an act of will. You can't think your way out of these lies. Intellectual understanding is not the same as seeing through the illusion. It's like someone describing to you that the earth is round when you're standing on flat ground. You might accept it intellectually, but your direct experience still shows you flatness. What's needed is a different kind of looking. Not thinking about these things, but observing directly. Not believing new ideas about yourself, but questioning the old ones. Not trying to become awakened, but investigating whether you're already awake and just haven't noticed. Start with the simplest observation. Right now, in this moment, are you actually experiencing separation, or are you experiencing a unified field of awareness in which thoughts, sensations, and perceptions appear? Don't think about it. Just look. Is there actually a separate you experiencing these things, or is there just experiencing happening? Look at this thing you call yourself. Can you actually find it? Where is it? Is it your body, but your body is constantly changing? Is it your thoughts, but thoughts come and go? Is it your memories, but memories are constantly being revised? What is this self you're so sure exists as a continuous entity? And this sense of inadequacy, where does it come from? Is it actually in your direct experience right now? Or is it a thought about yourself, a story you're telling, a comparison you're making? When you're fully absorbed in something, when you're completely present, is there any sense of inadequacy? Or does that only appear when you step back and start evaluating yourself? This investigation is not about reaching a conclusion. It's about looking so directly at your experience that the lies become obvious. It's like looking at an optical illusion. Once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. You might still see the illusion, but you're no longer fooled by it. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to figure all this out. You don't have to become someone who has seen through the lies. The seeing happens on its own when the conditions are right. Your job is not to achieve some state of enlightenment. Your job is to stop reinforcing the lies, to stop compulsively thinking thoughts that maintain the illusion of separation, fixity, and inadequacy. Every time you notice yourself defending your separate identity, pause. Every time you catch yourself trying to maintain a consistent self-image, pause. Every time you feel that fundamental sense of not being enough, pause. Don't try to change anything. Just notice. Just see what's actually happening. Because the lies are maintained by unconsciousness. They persist because you believe them without questioning. But the moment you bring awareness to them, the moment you actually look directly at the assumption rather than through it, something shifts. not because you've done something, but because light has been shone on what was hidden in darkness. This is why all the great spiritual teachings emphasize presence, awareness, consciousness, not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize. You are already aware, you are already conscious, you are already present. But you've been so focused on the content of awareness, so caught up in the story, that you've forgotten the awareness itself. And awareness is what you actually are. Not the objects of awareness, not the thoughts and feelings and sensations, but the awareness in which all of these appear. And awareness is not separate. It's not a fixed thing. It's not inadequate. These qualities belong to the objects appearing in awareness, not to awareness itself. When you rest as awareness rather than as the character in the story, the three lies are seen through naturally. There's no separation because awareness is the space in which everything appears. There's no fixed self because awareness is not a thing, but the capacity for things to appear. There's no inadequacy because awareness lacks nothing. It's already the fullness in which everything exists. I want to be very clear. I'm not asking you to believe any of this. Don't take my word for it. Don't make this into a new set of beliefs to replace the old ones. That would just be substituting one lie for another. Instead, investigate. Look at your own experience. Question the assumptions you've been operating under your entire life. The three lies everyone believes about themselves, separation, fixity, and inadequacy, are not your personal failing. They're part of the human condition. They're built into the structure of thought and language. Everyone is subject to them until they're seen through, so there's no blame, no fault. There's simply the possibility of waking up from the dream, of seeing through the story, of recognizing what you've always been beneath the layers of belief. And when that recognition happens, life doesn't stop. You don't float off into some detached state. The person continues, the body continues, the mind continues. But the identification shifts. You're no longer imprisoned by the false sense of self. You're free to be human without believing you're only human. Free to have an identity without being trapped by it. Free to engage with life without the desperate quality that comes from believing you're inadequate. This is the liberation that's available to every human being. Not some special state for special people. Simply the recognition of what's always been true, hidden beneath the... Your home is not merely a collection of walls and furniture. It is the space where you breathe without worry, where you can finally take off the mask you wear for the world. It is the one place where life should be allowed to flow naturally, like water finding its own level. And yet, how often do we invite into this sacred space people who disturb that flow, people who bring with them the weight of their anxieties, their judgments, their endless need to control and manipulate. There are certain types of people, you see, who carry with them a kind of psychic pollution, not because they are evil or malicious in some dramatic sense, but because they have not yet learned to let life be. They are still fighting with reality, still insisting that the universe should conform to their narrow expectations. And when such people enter your home, they bring that fight with them. They bring the tension, the resistance, the constant low-grade anxiety that makes peace impossible. Let me tell you about the first type, the chronic complainer. This is the person who walks through your door and immediately begins to catalogue everything that is wrong with the world. The weather is too hot or too cold. The traffic was unbearable. Their boss is an idiot. Their neighbor is inconsiderate. The government is corrupt. On and on it goes, an endless litany of grievances. Now you might think, this is simply someone having a bad day, venting their frustrations. But watch closely. This is not occasional venting. This is their natural state. They have made a lifestyle out of being bothered by life. They wake up in the morning looking for things to complain about. They go to bed at night, rehearsing their complaints for tomorrow. What they have forgotten, or perhaps never learned, is that complaining about reality is like shaking your fist at the rain. The rain does not care. It is not against you. It is just rain. The chronic complainer treats life as a personal insult. Everything that does not match their preferences becomes evidence that the universe is somehow failing them. But here is what they do not see. Their complaints are not observations about the world. They are revelations about their own mind. They are showing you that they have not yet learned the art of acceptance, the ability to say yes to what is. And when you invite such a person into your home, they bring this poisonous perspective with them. Suddenly your comfortable chair is not quite right. Your coffee is too weak or too strong. Your choice of music is questionable. Nothing is ever quite good enough because they have trained themselves to focus exclusively on what is wrong rather than what is simply present. But here is the deeper problem. Complaining is contagious. It spreads like a virus. You begin the afternoon feeling peaceful, content with your simple life. The complainer arrives, and within an hour you too are noticing all the little imperfections, all the things that could be better, all the ways in which life is not measuring up to some imaginary standard. The peace you felt has evaporated, replaced by a vague sense of dissatisfaction. This is why you must keep the chronic complainer away from your home, not because you are cruel or uncaring, but because you understand that your home must be a sanctuary. It must be a place where you can practice acceptance, where you can let life be exactly as it is, without the constant commentary of judgment. The second type of person to keep away is the energy vampire. This is someone who enters your space and immediately begins to drain your vitality. They do not do this consciously or with malicious intent. They are not rubbing their hands together, thinking about how to steal your energy. No, it is far more subtle than that. The energy vampire is someone who has not learned to generate their own sense of well-being. They are constantly looking outside themselves for validation, for attention, for proof that they matter. And so they latch onto others like a drowning person clutching at a life preserver. You can recognize them by how you feel after they leave. You feel exhausted, depleted, as if you've been carrying a heavy weight. Because in a sense, you have been. They have been unconsciously dumping their emotional burdens onto you, expecting you to carry what they refuse to carry themselves. They will monopolize the conversation, talking endlessly about their problems, their dramas, their latest crisis. But notice something, they do not actually want solutions. If you offer practical advice, they will immediately explain why it will not work. If you suggest a new perspective, they will cling even more tightly to their victim story. This is because their real need is not for help. Their real need is for attention. They have discovered that the being in crisis, being troubled, being overwhelmed gives them a steady supply of concern from others, makes them feel important, needed, central to someone's attention. And so they perpetuate their own suffering because it has become their currency. When such a person sits in your home, they suck all the oxygen out of the room. Everything becomes about them, their feelings, their needs, their endless internal drama. You cannot relax because you are constantly being pulled into their emotional whirlpool. You cannot simply be because they are demanding that you do something, fix something, validate something. And the tragedy is that no matter how much you give, it is never enough. Because the hole they are trying to fill cannot be filled from the outside. It can only be filled when they finally turn inward and discover their own completeness. But until that happens, they will continue to drain everyone around them, leaving behind a trail of exhausted and frustrated people. Your home cannot be a place of peace if it becomes a dumping ground for other people's unprocessed emotions. This is not selfishness. This is basic self-preservation. You cannot help anyone if you are yourself depleted. You cannot offer genuine compassion if you are resentful of being used. The third type is the person who treats your home as a stage for their performance. This is someone who cannot simply be present. They must always be performing, always proving something, always seeking applause. They walk through your door and immediately begin to tell you about their latest achievement, their recent purchase, their impressive connection with someone important. Every conversation becomes an opportunity for them to showcase how successful, how clever, how special they are. They are like peacocks spreading their feathers, except peacocks have the excuse of genuine beauty. This person has confused their role in life with their actual identity. They think they are their accomplishments, their possessions, their social status. They have built an elaborate costume, and now they must constantly maintain it, constantly remind everyone of how impressive it is. The exhaustion of this is palpable. What they do not understand is that true presence requires no performance. A flower does not try to be beautiful. It simply opens, and its beauty is evident. A child does not rehearse being playful. The playfulness flows naturally from their being. But this person has forgotten how to simply be. They have become so identified with their act that they no longer know who they are without it. And when they enter your home, they turn your living room into their theater. They need an audience. And you become that audience whether you wish to or not. You cannot have a genuine conversation because they are not really listening. They are waiting for their next cue, their next opportunities, to bring the spotlight back to themselves. This creates a peculiar kind of loneliness. You are sitting with someone, sharing space with them, and yet there is no real meeting. Because they are not actually there, they are too busy managing their performance to be present to what is actually happening. You might as well be talking to a well-rehearsed recording. Your home should be a place where masks can come off, where people can stop performing and simply exist. But the performer cannot do this. They are terrified of being seen without their costume because they believe the costume is all they are. And so your home becomes just another venue for their exhausting show. Keep them away, not with anger or judgment, but with the simple recognition that you need space where authenticity is possible. You need a place where people can be ordinary, where the pressure to impress is released, where genuine human connection can occur. The fourth type is the person who lives in constant comparison. They walk into your home and immediately begin measuring. Is your home bigger than theirs? Is your furniture nicer? Do you have something they do not have? And equally, do they have things you lack? Their mind is like an accountant's ledger, constantly tallying who is winning and who is losing in the game of life. But here is what they have not realized. Nobody is keeping score except them. Life is not a competition, it is a dance. And you cannot dance if you are too busy checking whether you are dancing better than everyone else. This person cannot simply enjoy what is present because they are always comparing it to something else. They cannot appreciate your hospitality because they are mentally comparing it to other people's hospitality. They cannot relax in your company because they are too busy evaluating whether you are more successful than them or less successful, richer or poorer, happier or sadder. This makes genuine friendship impossible because friendship requires a basic equality, a recognition that we are all human beings stumbling through existence together. But the compara has divided the world into winners and losers, the superior and the inferior, and they are constantly anxious about which category they fall into. When they sit in your home, you can feel their assessment happening. They are not really seeing you. They are seeing how you measure up to their internal standards. They are not appreciating your home. They are comparing it to some ideal in their mind or to other homes they have visited. Nothing is experienced directly. Everything is filtered through this exhausting process of comparison. And this attitude is infectious. Before long, you find yourself comparing too. You start to see your own home through their judgmental eyes. That comfortable chair you loved suddenly seems shabby. That painting you enjoyed now seems amateurish. The contentment you felt has been replaced by a vague sense of inadequacy. This is the poison of comparison. It takes what is simple and good and turns it into a source of anxiety. It takes what is enough and makes it seem lacking. It steals the present moment and replaces it with an endless measurement against imaginary standards. Your home must be protected from this energy. The fifth and perhaps most dangerous type is the person who brings drama wherever they go. Their life is an endless soap opera, and they need you to play a supporting role. There is always a crisis, always a conflict, always an emergency that requires immediate attention. They thrive on chaos because chaos makes them feel alive. Ordinary peaceful existence feels flat to them, boring. And so they unconsciously create turmoil. They pick fights, they stir up trouble, they turn molehills into mountains. And then they draw everyone around them into their manufactured drama. These people have not learned that peace is not the absence of stimulation. It is the presence of harmony. They think that excitement requires conflict, that intensity requires crisis. They have confused the adrenaline rush of drama with actual vitality. When such a person enters your home, suddenly small things become large. They amplify everything, turning the volume up on life until the noise becomes unbearable. And here is their trick. They make you feel responsible for their drama. If you do not react strongly enough, you are unsupportive. If you suggest they are overreacting, you are uninvalidating their feelings. They have learned to use emotional manipulation to keep everyone engaged with their chaos. But watch what happens if you refuse to participate. If you remain calm, if you do not feed the drama with your reaction, they become frustrated. Because they need your participation. They need your shock, your concern, your agitation to fuel their performance. Without it, the drama deflates. Your home cannot be a theater for other people's chaos. It must be a refuge from the noise of the world, not an amplifier of it. It must be a place where calm can exist, where simple moments can unfold without being interrupted by manufactured crisis. So these are the 5 types. The chronic complainer who cannot accept what is, the energy vampire who drains your vitality, the performer who cannot stop the show, the comparer who cannot simply appreciate, and the drama creator who cannot live in peace. Now, I am not suggesting you become cold or unkind. I am not saying you should judge these people harshly or treat them with contempt. Remember, they too are struggling. They too are caught in their own patterns, their own unconscious habits. They are doing the best they know how with the understanding they have. But understanding their struggle does not mean you must sacrifice your own peace. Compassion does not require you to be a doormat. You can care about someone, while also recognizing that their presence in your space is harmful to your well-being. Think of it this way. If someone had a contagious illness, you would not invite them into your home. Not because you hate them, but because you understand that protecting your health is necessary. The patterns I have described are also contagious, but they infect your psychological and spiritual health rather than your physical body. Your home is your temple, your sanctuary, the space where you can finally stop fighting and simply be. It must be protected, not with walls and locks, but with wisdom and discernment. You must learn to recognize what energies nourish life and what energies deplete it. This does not mean your home becomes a fortress of isolation. It means it becomes a garden, carefully tended, where only life-giving elements are invited in. A place where genuine connection can happen, where laughter is real rather than nervous, where silence is comfortable rather than awkward, where people can take off their masks because the pressure to perform has been lifted. When you keep these 5 types away from your home, something wonderful happens. The space begins to clear, like muddy water settling when left alone. The constant noise quiets. The tension releases. And in that clearing, you rediscover what it means to simply live. You find yourself breathing more deeply. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw untenches. The constant vigilance relaxes, because you are no longer having to manage other people's dysfunction. You are free to just be, to drink your tea, to watch the light change, to hear the birds, to exist without commentary or drama or performance. And here is the beautiful part. When your home becomes this kind of sanctuary, you become more available for genuine connection because you are no longer depleted by toxic interactions. You have more energy for real friendship. Because you are no longer surrounded by complainers, you can appreciate the people who show up with gratitude. Because you are no longer hosting performers, you can welcome those who are comfortable being ordinary. Your home becomes a place that reflects your values, your priorities, your understanding of what life is really about. It becomes a living statement that says, I choose peace over drama, presence over performance, acceptance over complaint, generosity over energy vampirism, appreciation over comparison. This is not about being perfect or having the ideal home. It is about recognizing that the energy you allow into your space matters. It shapes your consciousness. It affects your peace. It determines whether your home is a place of restoration. Have you ever dreamed of one day standing firm like a rock in the middle of a waterfall? Indifferent to criticism, unafraid of being abandoned, unshaken by the invisible cuts that others leave behind, unintentionally or deliberately. You imagine yourself becoming a steel statue, cold, invulnerable, so that finally you can rest. Let go of the burden of always having to be okay, always strong, always maintaining the perfect image that even you have grown tired of building. But pause for a second. Listen to this, not as empty advice, but as a whisper from the very darkness you're trying to avoid. The more you try to escape pain, the tighter it clings to you. The higher you build your walls, the more you become a prisoner in your own fortress. The more you pretend I'm fine, the more pain seeps through every crack, gnawing at you from within until you're exhausted yet still forcing a smile. This isn't a lecture on weakness. This is a call to courage. Pain isn't an enemy to destroy, but a messenger from the depths of your soul. It doesn't come from the venomous words out there, not from betrayal or the voids others leave behind. It only truly stabs you when it touches an old wound, the story you keep replaying in your head, the fear of abandonment, the belief that if I'm good enough, strong enough, lovable enough, no one will hurt me again. You see, the world doesn't have absolute power to break you. That power lies in how you receive what happens. One person can be rejected and still smile as they move forward, because there's no empty space left inside for old pain to echo. Another can collapse from a single cold glance, because that look awakens a chorus of past rejections. So where's the difference? Not in the event, but in the internal point of contact. The same arrow, but some wear armor, others bare their chest. The armor here isn't coldness or numbness, that's just a fake shell, bound to crack sooner or later. Real armor is awareness, knowing exactly where your wound is, why it's bleeding, and instead of covering it, you sit down, look it straight in the eye and whisper, I see you. That's when the miracle happens. Not because the pain disappears, but because it loses its power. It's still there, still aching, but it no longer controls you. You no longer react like a puppet on strings. You observe, you feel, and you choose how to respond. But before stepping into that journey, admit a hard truth. You're still trying to control the world. You believe that if you're smart enough, kind enough, talented enough, life will treat you fairly. You live in constant tension, anticipating every twist, defending against every possibility of hurt. And that very control is the rope binding you tightest. You don't need more defense techniques. You need more light. Light shining into the corners you call the past, mistakes, shame. Light doesn't erase darkness, but it turns darkness from a lair of demons into just a part of your house, old, dusty, but yours. And here's the key. Freedom doesn't lie in the world changing, but in you stopping giving the world power. Everything outside only has strength when it finds an echo inside. When that echo falls silent, not because you cover your ears, but because you've made peace with it, then even if the wind howls, you stand still. If you're nodding, if something in your chest is stirring, then pause for a second and place your hand on your heart. Feel the beat. That's the reminder. You're still alive, still have the chance to go deeper. The next part will take you down one more level, where automatic reactions, sudden anger, wordless sadness, all have origins. They're not random. They're letters from the forgotten part of you. Are you ready to open the envelope? Imagine your life as a ship speeding through the dark night. On deck, you declare yourself captain, holding the wheel, barking orders, adjusting sails, checking the compass. You believe you're leading the journey, but in the pitch black hole below, there's someone else, nameless, faceless, quietly pulling the throttle, dropping anchor, even stoking the engine fire. Every time the ship suddenly veers, you're surprised, irritated, blaming the waves outside. You have no idea that the real driver has never come on deck. That driver is the unconscious. Not some vague mist, but a complete operating system. Buried memories, suppressed emotions, forbidden desires, fears of abandonment. It never sleeps. It works 24 hours a day, sending signals through sudden anger, unexplained tears, rational decisions you later sabotage. You ask, why does an offhand comment shatter me? Because that comment isn't offhand. It's the key that fits an old lock. The lock named not good enough, unworthy, will be left behind. You hear the click, and the whole door to the past swings open. Images of parents turning away, friends going silent, lovers disappearing. The present words are just the fuse. The bomb was planted long ago. And what do you do with the bomb? You seal the lid. You say, don't think about it, forget it, be strong. You shove it into a dark corner, cover it with dust labeled, I'm fine. But the bomb doesn't vanish. It builds pressure. One day, a light breeze is enough to detonate it, and you call that a bad day. Alan Watts once laughed. You can't control the river by standing on the bank shouting commands. You have to jump in, let the current take you, then learn to swim with it. The unconscious is the river. The more you resist, the harder it pulls. The more you pretend not to see it, the more it surfaces as repeating relationships, self-destructive habits, midnight anxiety. But there's another way. Sit down with the driver in the dark, not to chase him away, not to seize the wheel, just to look him in the face. Ask, who are you? What do you want? What are you afraid of? At first he'll growl. He'll hurl horrific images at you. The time you were laughed at in class, the time you begged someone not to leave, the time you stood alone in a crowd. Don't run. Don't shout. Just stay. As Watts said, the only way to master a nightmare is to step into it and ask what dance it wants to do. When you stay, something strange happens. The driver is no longer the enemy. He's a misunderstood protector. He pulls the throttle because he believes slowing down is dangerous. He drops anchor because he fears you'll drift into deeper waters. He stokes the fire because he's afraid you'll freeze in your own loneliness. Everything he does stems from a distorted loyalty to the child version of you who still believes, if I don't control, I'll die. And this is when you reach out, thank you for keeping me alive. I'm grown now. I can drive. No need to fight. No need to exile. Just dialogue. Every time you do, an invisible rope loosens. The ship stops jerking. You start to feel the true rhythm of the journey, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes rocking, sometimes still. But don't celebrate yet. The driver won't hand over the keys immediately. He needs proof you won't banish him back to the dark. The only proof is consistency. Today, anger flares. You don't suppress it. Don't lash out. Just ask, where are you from? Tomorrow, fear of abandonment rises. You don't rush to text begging. Just whisper, I know you're here. I'm not running. The more you dialogue, the more you realize irrational reactions aren't irrational. They're maps. Every anger points to where your voice was stolen. Every sadness leads to the moment you learn to fake happiness. Every anxiety is a warning from the part of you that still believes, if I'm not perfect, no one will stay. And this map isn't for you to fix yourself. No one needs a new ship. You just need to understand the mechanics of the old one. When you know which throttle overheats the engine, Which anchor is too heavy, which sail is torn, you're no longer surprised. You drive with the unconscious instead of being driven by it. Now you stand at the edge of the abyss. Behind is the familiar deck. Shouts of hold the wheel, clanging metal of must control, whistling wind of don't let anyone see you weak. Ahead is open space, no compass, no map, no promise of safety. Only one requirement. Let go of the shell. The shell isn't your skin. It's the persona, the mask you've worn since you learned to say, good child, good student, don't cry. It's the story you tell to be loved. I'm the strong one, need no one, fear nothing. It's the wall you built to hide the nights curled under blankets. The heartbreaks you smile through. Alan Watts laughs. You think you are the mask? Then fear losing it. But the mask can't breathe. Only when you take it off do you inhale real air. The death of the shell isn't a dramatic moment. It's thousands of small ones. The time you don't retaliate when insulted. The time you admit I'm scared instead of I'm fine. The time you sit with pain instead of rushing to blame someone. Each time, a piece flakes off. At first you panic. If the mask is gone, who will love me? Then you realize the mask was what made you lonely. When the shell cracks, you enter the refining fire. Not hellfire, but purifying fire, the kind that doesn't burn, just melts away what's fake. In that fire, you see, fear of abandonment isn't truth about you, but a survival lesson from childhood. If I'm not good, Mom will be mad. Explosive anger isn't your personality, but a suppressed scream from all the times you swallowed tears to keep the peace. Need for recognition isn't ambition, but a hole from times your achievements were dismissed, love measured by grades. The fire doesn't judge, it just illuminates. And in that light, you're no longer the wounded one or the one who must be strong. You're just present. But the fire is hot. It demands you sit still. No running for comfort. No hastily gluing the mask back. Just sit. Let the heat seep into every cell. Watts says, don't try to put out the fire. Let it cook you. Raw rice is bland. Cooked rice is fragrant. In this process, you'll meet inner death. Not physical death, but the death of the old self. The old self has names. I must be loved to exist. I must control to be safe. I must be perfect to be worthy. When these mantras dissolve, you'll pass through emptiness, a silence so deep you hear blood rushing in your ears. Don't fill the emptiness with alcohol, work, new love, or empty philosophy. Emptiness is the delivery room. In it, something new is forming. Not a better version of you, no one needs an upgrade. But the original version, the child once taught to hide tears, now allowed to cry. The adult once forced to be strong, now allowed to be weak. The human who lived to be loved, now loves without needing return. And here's the paradox. Only when you accept disintegration do you become invulnerable. Because now, there's nothing to lose. No image to protect, no story to defend. You just are no need to prove it. Watts tells of a Zen master with a robber's knife at his throat. Go ahead and cut. I don't claim this head as my own. The robber trembles and flees, not from fear of death, but because there was no place to strike. The next part will take you out of the fire, into the dawn, after the long night, where you no longer need armor, because you are the armor, where pain still comes, but no longer leads you astray, where you live from the center, not the surface. You've walked through the fire. The ashes are still warm under your feet, but the air has changed. No more stinging smoke, just the scent of damp earth after rain. The shell has fallen. The mask has shattered. You stand there, bare, with nothing to cling to, and the strangest thing is you don't feel dead. You just feel alive, for the first time fully, without acting, without holding an image, without proving anything. This isn't a dazzling moment to snap and post online. Not a state of I've awakened to brag about. This is the everyday state, as simple as brewing morning tea, hearing birds on the porch, and knowing you don't have to be okay to be allowed to exist. Alan Watts once said, when you realize there's no one to become, that's when you truly start living. Living from the center means when criticism flies at you, you hear it, feel a slight sting in your chest, but the sting doesn't swell into a storm. You know, this is an old scar being touched. It reminds me I once believed I had to be perfect. I don't believe that anymore. Then you smile, nod, and keep walking. No need to justify. No need to fight back. It means when an ex texts, "I miss you," you don't rush back to fill a hole. You read, breathe deep, and reply, or don't, from a place of inner fullness, not lack. It means when your boss yells at you in front of everyone, you don't shrink, don't snap back. You just look at the boss's anger, look at your fear of being belittled, and choose a response without losing yourself. You still feel pain, don't misunderstand. Dawn doesn't erase night. It just shows you pain is a guest, not the homeowner. The guest arrives, you invite them to sit, pour water, ask, "What do you want to say?" Then see them off without clinging. Watts tells of a Zen master in a boat on the river. Wind blows, boat tilts. Disciple panics. "Master, we're going to capsize." Master smiles. "Capsize, then what?" The river still flows. You are the river, not the boat, not the passenger, not the wind. You are the entire movement. When you understand this, you no longer need to become someone unhurt. You are unhurt not because you don't feel, but because there's no place left for hurt to take root. And here's the final part, also the hardest, living this every day. In the morning, instead of checking your phone for praise, place your hand on your chest. Ask, "What do I need today?" When angry, instead of firing off a hostile text, walk for 10 minutes. Let the anger speak its piece. Then decide if it's worth responding. When sad, instead of scrolling for distraction, sit down, cry if you need, write on paper, "What is this sadness about?" Then burn the paper, not to erase, but to acknowledge. When afraid, instead of faking confidence, say the truth. "I'm afraid of failing." And strangely, telling the truth makes the fear dissolve. Awareness isn't a destination, but a habit. Like brushing teeth, like breathing. You'll still meet old lovers, still face rejection, still lose things. But the difference is, you're no longer the victim of the story, you're the storyteller. One day, you'll realize you no longer need to become invulnerable, because you already are, not because you're stronger, but because you've stopped fighting yourself. Watts ended a lecture with, "Life is a dance. You don't dance to get somewhere. You dance because the music is playing. Now, the music is playing. Stand up. No mask, no armor, just you, with all your scars, all your laughter, all your silence. If something in you stirs, whisper, 'I choose to live.'"
There are moments in life when words strike us with an almost eerie precision, as if they were spoken directly to us and no one else. You may have passed over the very same words before, perhaps even laughed at them or found them unremarkable. And yet suddenly, in the middle of your own struggles, they arrive with such clarity and such force that they feel destined, inevitable, as though the universe itself has conspired to deliver them into your hands. This is the mystery of timing, the way a message finds you not when you demand it, but when you are prepared to receive it. We often imagine that wisdom can be gathered like coins, that if we read enough, listen enough, think enough, we will finally hold it in our grasp. But real wisdom is slippery. It is not simply a collection of ideas to be memorized and filed away. It is a recognition, a shift of perspective, a kind of remembering of what you have always known deep down. And recognition cannot be forced. You may search feverishly, read endlessly, strain with every ounce of effort, but nothing happens until the moment ripens. Like fruit that will not sweeten before its season, wisdom will not open until you are ready. Consider how often this has been true in your own life. Perhaps someone once told you something you dismissed outright, only to find years later that the very same words became the key to your freedom. Or perhaps a book sat on your shelf, forgotten, until one day you picked it up and suddenly every page seemed to speak directly to your heart. The words did not change, you did. Your life unfolded through joys and sorrows, through mistakes and triumphs, and at last you arrived at the moment when those words could land. The message was waiting all along, but you had to live enough to hear it. This is why the message you are hearing now feels as though it was meant for you. Not because someone has tailored it, not because fate has singled you out, but because your life has ripened to the point where it resonates. It is not so much that the message found you, but that you grew into it. And in that growing, the meeting feels inevitable. Just as the river winding through valleys seems destined to meet the sea, so your path has brought you to this very moment where these words and your awareness converge. We do not like to think of life this way because it challenges the notion that we are in complete control. We imagine that we chart our own course, that growth is something we can schedule and demand. But notice how your greatest realizations have come to you. Did they not often arrive unexpectedly, as gifts you could not have summoned? The most profound lessons tend to come uninvited, often in moments of despair or confusion, when you were forced to drop your defenses and listen with a new kind of openness. It is not that suffering is desirable, but that it humbles us, softens us, makes us porous enough for wisdom to enter. Think of the way the earth must be prepared before seeds will grow. The soil must be turned, the weeds cleared, the rains must fall. Only then will the seed sprout, not because the seed has changed, but because the conditions have aligned. And so it is with the messages of life. They lie dormant around us, unnoticed, until at last the conditions within us are ready. Then, what was once meaningless bursts into significance, as though it had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. And so it may be with the message you are hearing now. You could have heard these very same words years ago and felt nothing. You could hear them again years from now and feel something entirely different. But here, now, they strike with the peculiar force of inevitability. They belong to this moment because you belong to this moment, and the two are not separate. You and the message are the same wave rising in the same ocean, cresting together, inseparable. It is tempting to call this fate, or destiny, or divine guidance. And indeed, those are names we give to this uncanny harmony between inner need and outer event. But the deeper truth is simpler. Life is whole. You and the words you hear are not two independent things colliding by chance. They are expressions of the same unfolding, the same awareness manifesting as thought, as sound, as recognition. The timing feels mysterious because you do not see the whole pattern. You see only the fragment, the meeting point, not the vast web of conditions that made it possible. But if you could see it all, you would know that it could not have been otherwise. When you look back upon your life, you may notice how many such moments have shaped you. The chance encounter that changed your direction, the unexpected failure that opened a new path, the heartbreak that taught you compassion. At the time, these events seemed random, even cruel, and yet, later, you may recognize them as the very ground from which growth arose. The teaching was there, embedded in the experience, waiting until you were ready to see. The message is not separate from the life that carries it. Life itself is the teacher, and every moment is a lesson. So when a message arrives that feels meant for you, do not cling to it as though it were a rare jewel to be hoarded. Instead, see it as the echo of your own awareness, calling back to remind you of what you already are. The truth of who you are cannot be given to you, for you already possess it. What the words provide is only a mirror, a reflection that allows you to see more clearly. The resonance you feel is the sound of your own being, recognized at last. This is why the message feels alive. It is not information, it is transformation. It does not merely add to your store of knowledge, but reorients your vision, turning you toward yourself. And when you feel it strike, it is because the timing is perfect, because the whole of your life has prepared you for this recognition. Nothing has been wasted, not the failures, not the doubts, not the fears. Each has played its part in bringing you here to this exact moment where the message you were meant to hear becomes audible at last. The curious thing about messages is that they are never truly finished. Even when a sentence ends, the silence that follows carries its own meaning. And when a lecture concludes, the words continue to echo in the chambers of the mind. reshaping themselves into new insights long after the voice has faded. A message that finds you is not confined to the moment of hearing. It lingers, germinates, grows. You may walk away believing you have understood, only to discover days later that the understanding has deepened, that the words have taken root in some hidden part of you. This is why we must be careful not to treat wisdom as though it were a possession, a jewel to be locked away in a cabinet. Wisdom is alive, and to treat it as a possession is to kill it. What was once vibrant becomes brittle, what was once fluid becomes rigid, and so, to keep wisdom alive, we must return to it again and again, not with the expectation of hearing something new, but with the openness to hear it differently. The words may not change, but you will, and each encounter will reveal something fresh. Think of it like returning to a river. You may step into the same stream again and again, but it is never the same water that touches your skin. The current moves on, new waters flow in, and so each visit is both familiar and entirely new. So it is with the teachings that move us. Each time you hear them, you are not the same person you were before, and so they strike you differently. They find you again at a new depth, in a new season of life, and the resonance continues. The greatest danger is to assume that once you have heard a message, you have exhausted its meaning. This is the arrogance of the mind, which seeks to categorize and conclude, to say, I know that already. But the most profound truths are not things you know once and for all. They are things you live moment by moment, again and again. To say, I know that I am not separate from the world, is not the same as living with the felt reality of inseparability. To say, I know that all things change, is not the same as flowing with change in the midst of loss. Knowledge can be stored away, but wisdom must be renewed in each breath. This is why the message you were meant to hear does not end with the hearing. It continues as a practice, as a way of being. It whispers in the quiet choices you make, in the way you respond to frustration, in the way you soften toward yourself and others. It is not a grand revelation to be remembered, but a gentle rhythm to be lived. So let us return to the question, why does the message arrive when it does? Why not sooner? Why not later? To answer this, we must look closely at the nature of readiness. We often think of readiness as something we can control, as though we could prepare ourselves perfectly for wisdom to enter. But readiness is not an achievement, it is a surrender. It is not that you make yourself ready, but that life wears you down until you can no longer cling to your defenses. Readiness is the collapse of resistance, the softening of the shell, the moment when you can no longer maintain the illusion of control. Think of the way a seed must crack open before it can grow. To the seed, the cracking may feel like destruction, like death, but in truth, it is the beginning of life. So too with us. Our moments of breaking are often the moments of greatest possibility. What feels like the end is often the opening, the place where light enters. And it is in those moments that the message finds us, not because it was absent before, but because we are finally porous enough to receive it. This is why suffering, though painful, often becomes the soil of transformation. It is not that suffering is inherently good or desirable, but that it dissolves the rigid certainties we cling to. It humbles the mind that believes it has everything figured out. It softens the heart that has grown hard with pride or fear. And in that softening, the message can enter not as a doctrine imposed from outside, but as a truth recognized from within. Yet there is another side to this. For just as suffering can prepare the ground, so too can joy. There are times when beauty itself is the message, when a sunset leaves you breathless, when music draws tears from your eyes, when laughter reminds you that life is worth living. In those moments, too, the message arrives, not in words, but in presence. The teaching is not always a correction. Sometimes it is an affirmation, a reminder that the world is already whole, that you are already included, that nothing is missing. And so the message is not bound to a single form. It may come as a lecture, a book, a conversation with a friend. It may come as silence, as nature, as the simple act of breathing. To look for it only in one form is to miss its endless variety. The message is life itself, unfolding in countless guises, always speaking, always available, but only heard when the ear is open. Now consider this. If the message always comes when we are ready, then perhaps every message you have ever heard was the right one at the right time, even if you did not recognize it as such. Perhaps even the words you rejected, the teachings you mocked, the advice you ignored, played their part. They planted seeds that lay dormant until the season was right. And even your resistance was part of the process, for it shaped the path that brought you to where you are now. This means that nothing is wasted. No conversation, no book, no experience lies outside the web of meaning. Even what seems irrelevant or mistaken may reveal itself later as essential. The fragments fit together in ways you cannot see, and only in hindsight do you realize that each played its part. So too with this message. You may not grasp it fully now, but perhaps later it will blossom, and you will look back with gratitude that it was waiting for you here. But there is an even deeper implication. If the message finds you when you most need it, then you too may become the bearer of a message for someone else. Not because you have all the answers, not because you must preach or persuade, but because simply by living, you become part of the pattern. A word spoken in kindness, a gesture of understanding, a moment of honesty, these two can arrive with uncanny timing for another. You may never know it, but your life may be the message that someone else most needs to hear. This is why it is important not to underestimate the power of presence. You do not have to contrive grand teachings or prepare elaborate speeches. Sometimes your simple being, your willingness to show up authentically, carries more weight than any doctrine. For presence itself is the message that life is whole, that awareness is enough, that nothing is missing. And so we return to the heart of the matter. The message you were meant to hear is not a secret code hidden away in distant texts. It is the ongoing revelation of life itself, unfolding in this moment. As you listen, as you breathe. The timing feels uncanny because you are beginning to notice the harmony that has always been there, the inseparability of inner and outer, of self and world. The message is not separate from you. You are the message, embodied, enacted, spoken in every gesture. To realize this is to find a profound peace. For then you no longer chase desperately after answers, as though they were hiding somewhere beyond your reach. You see instead that the answers arise with the questions, that the teaching and the student are not two. You see that life itself is the teacher, and you are both the listener and the voice. And in that recognition, the urgency drops away. You can rest, knowing that nothing is missing, that what you need will find you when you are ready. So, perhaps the greatest message of all is this: trust the unfolding. Do not rush, do not grasp, do not despair. The words you need, the experiences you need, the lessons you need, they're all woven into the fabric of life, and they will appear at the moment when they can be received. Trust that timing, for it is wiser than your plans. Trust that pattern, for it holds you even when you cannot see it. Trust that life, for it has carried you here to this moment, where the message you were meant to hear has found you at last. From the moment we wake in the morning until the moment we drift into sleep, there is a constant stream of words, images, judgments, and memories passing through the mind. It is like an endless conversation that never stops, a commentary on everything you do, everything you see, everything you remember, and everything you fear. And because it never stops, you begin to assume it must be you. After all, who else could it be? These are your thoughts, your worries, your plans, your stories. And so you equate yourself with this voice, believing that your entire identity is made up of what passes through the mind. But here is the problem. If you are your thoughts, why do you so often feel trapped by them? Why do your thoughts so often torment you, contradict you, sabotage you? Why do they seem to arrive uninvited, staying long after you wish they would go? Have you noticed how thoughts behave like guests who refuse to leave? You invite one in perhaps a simple memory or a plan for tomorrow, and suddenly it has brought all its friends. Before you know it, you are hosting an entire party you never agreed to. Worries about money, arguments you've had, fantasies of revenge, daydreams of success. They chatter endlessly, refusing to leave the room. And because you mistake yourself for this party of thoughts, you begin to feel helpless. You think, this is who I am, a confused, anxious, restless mind. But is that true? Let us play a little game of attention. Close your eyes and listen to your thoughts. Watch them appear. Some are memories, some are images, some are just stray words. Now ask yourself, if you are your thoughts, then who is watching them? Notice there is an awareness that sees the thought come and go. That awareness is not the thought itself. It is like the sky in which the clouds drift. And this realization is deeply unsettling to the ego, because it means you are not what you always thought you were. You are not the voice in your head. You are the silence in which the voice appears. But for most of us, this confusion persists for our entire lives. We live identified with our thoughts. We cling to every idea, every belief, every worry, as though it were who we are. So when your mind says, you are worthless, you believe it. When it says, you will never succeed, you collapse into despair. When it says, you must be perfect, you live under impossible pressure. And yet, if you really were your thoughts, you would control them. You would simply choose better ones. But you cannot. The thoughts come and go, uninvited, like the wind. This is the problem of mistaking thoughts for self. You end up living like a puppet, jerked around by whatever idea happens to pass through the mind. Think of how exhausting it is to live this way. You lie awake at night, your mind racing. You replay conversations from the day. You imagine disasters that never happen. You judge yourself mercilessly for mistakes that only you remember. The result is suffering, anxiety, restlessness, a constant dissatisfaction. And because you believe these thoughts are you cannot escape. You think, this is just who I am. But what if it isn't? Imagine a radio left on in the background, playing all day. Sometimes it plays beautiful music. Sometimes it plays commercials you despise. Sometimes it interrupts with static or bad news. And yet, you would never mistake yourself for the radio. You simply hear it. But with thoughts, you forget this. You fuse with them. You identify with them. And so, instead of listening, you become entangled. This is why people suffer from overthinking. Because if you believe you are your thoughts, then every anxious idea becomes a threat to your very being. Every self-criticism cuts like a knife. Every worry about tomorrow becomes an existential crisis. And the tragedy is that none of it is true. They are just thoughts, flickers in the mind. But because you take them as yourself, they become chains. Consider the paradox. If you are your thoughts, then who is the one hearing them? Who is the one aware of the endless chatter? Clearly, you are not the thought itself, but the witness behind it. Yet, because this simple truth is so often overlooked, people spend their entire lives trapped in an illusion. They fight their own minds, trying desperately to control, suppress, or silence thoughts, not realizing that the struggle itself arises from the false belief that these thoughts are who they are. The problem, then, is not the thoughts themselves. Thoughts are natural, just as waves are natural on the ocean. The problem is that you cling to them, identify with them, mistake them for yourself, and so you suffer, tossed about by the storm, forgetting that you are not the waves, but the ocean. To see this clearly is the beginning of freedom. But before we can discover what that freedom looks like, we must first face honestly the trap we are in, because until you see the problem, you cannot let go of it. So ask yourself again, are you the voice in your head, or are you the silence that hears it? If the problem is mistaking yourself for your thoughts, then the resolution is seeing clearly that you are not them. And when you see this, something extraordinary happens. You discover a freedom that has always been there, hidden in plain sight. Let us return to the image of the sky and the clouds. Thoughts are like clouds, drifting, changing, forming shapes, breaking apart. Some are dark and heavy, some are light and beautiful. But the sky is never harmed by the clouds. It holds them, but it is not them. In the same way, you are not the thoughts that pass through your mind. You are the vast awareness in which they arise. And when you realize this, a profound shift occurs. You stop clinging to every passing thought as though it were life or death. You stop believing that the chatter in your head defines who you are. You begin to watch thoughts the way you might watch the wind rustle through the trees, present, but not binding. Notice this in practice. A thought arises, I am not good enough. Before, you would take it seriously, feel wounded by it, identify with it. Now, you simply notice, there is the thought that I am not good enough. And just like that, it begins to lose its power. The thought has not disappeared, but your identification with it has. And that makes all the difference. This is what the Buddhists call non-attachment. Not the suppression of thoughts, not the denial of them, but the refusal to confuse them with who you are. When you see a thought simply as a thought, you are free. It may still pass through, but it no longer commands you. And so, life becomes lighter. The anxious voice is still there, but it is only a voice. The self-critical story still arises, but it is only a story. You no longer fight with your own mind, because you no longer mistake it for yourself. Think of the relief this brings. The relief of no longer believing every worry, no longer collapsing under every judgment, no longer being tormented by every story your mind tells. Instead, you can smile at it, as you might smile at a child's imagination, vivid, dramatic, sometimes frightening, but ultimately harmless. Alan Watts often pointed out that you cannot get rid of your thoughts any more than you can smooth out the surface of the sea. The more you try, the more turbulent it becomes. So the secret is not to fight them, but to let them be, to let them come and go like waves, without needing to control them. For you are not the waves, you are the sea itself. And here is where life becomes miraculous. Because when you stop clinging to thoughts, you begin to experience moments of stillness. You notice the silence between thoughts. You realize that the mind is not a constant stream, but a series of flickers with gaps of awareness in between. And in those gaps, you discover something deeper than thought, presence itself. Presence is not something you think about. It is not a concept. It is the felt reality of being here and now. It is the taste of food, the warmth of the sun, the sound of laughter. It is life directly experienced before the mind comments on it. When you are no longer entangled in thoughts, you can finally experience life as it island. This is why your thoughts are not you. Because the you that is truly alive is not the commentary, but the awareness that hears it. And when you rest in that awareness, life opens up. Think of how this changes even the simplest things. Eating becomes an act of presence, not a distracted rush. Walking becomes a dance, not just a way of getting somewhere. conversations become listening and sharing, not just waiting for your turn to speak. Life becomes richer because you are no longer lost in the endless chatter of the mind. Now, this does not mean thoughts disappear. They still come, they still go, but you no longer cling to them. You no longer build your identity out of them. And so you live in a freedom that is untouched by the storm. It is like learning to surf. At first, you are tossed around by every wave. You are frightened, overwhelmed, exhausted. But once you learn to balance, the waves are no longer a threat. They become the very medium of your joy. Thoughts are like that. When you are identified with them, they drown you. When you see them as passing waves, they become the rhythm of your play. And perhaps the most beautiful realization is this: the awareness behind thought is already free, already whole, already untouched. You do not need to create it. You only need to notice it. When a thought comes, you notice. When it goes, you notice. And in that noticing, you discover the vastness that was always there. So the invitation is simple. Stop trying to control your thoughts. Stop trying to be rid of them. Instead, see them for what they are: fleeting appearances, like echoes, like ripples on the surface of being. And in doing so, you discover what you truly are. Not the echo, but the silence. Not the ripple, but the depth. Not the thought, but the awareness in which all thoughts arise and dissolve. This is the liberation. This is why your thoughts are not you, because you are something far greater, the space in which the whole dance of thought, feeling, and life unfolds. And when you realize this, you are free.
Have you ever sat down, truly quiet, and let your mind drift back to old moments' words blurted out in anger, hasty actions you later wished you could pull back like a thread from a tapestry? We all have such scars, jagged fragments of memory lying dormant in the dark corners of the soul. And then, from the vantage point of today, with all its new light, with a wisdom more seasoned, you look back at your former self, as if that person should have known everything you know now. But please, pause for a moment. Imagine scolding a 3-year-old for not solving a quadratic equation. Strangely, we often do the same to ourselves. That person from the past, with eyes still foggy, a heart still tender, with knowledge just enough to take the next step, tried their best within their limits. Not by your standards now, but by their own at the time. Life, you see, is not a test graded from on high. It's more like a dance rehearsal in the dark, where every misstep is part of learning balance. Mistakes are not sins. They are off-key notes in the symphony taking shape. If you deny them, you deny the very path that brought you here. Forgiving yourself, therefore, is not a solemn ritual, not a resounding declaration in a church. It's just a gentler gaze into the past. Instead of whipping the horse that ran its hardest, you stroke it and whisper. You did it with what you had. Imagine carrying a backpack full of stones. Each stone is a painful memory, a word you wish you'd never said, an action you want to erase. You trudge through the years, the pack growing heavier, your back more bent. But one day, you realize those stones are no longer on the road ahead. They're just images in your mind, ones you voluntarily clung to. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Letting go is stopping the self-torment for a version that's dead. The person who said those hurtful words no longer lives. The only one still imprisoned in the jail of memory is you, the current version, still locking the door yourself. Forgiveness is unlocking. Not to flee the past, but to step through it without stumbling. You don't have to love everything that happened. You just need to stop warring with it. Warring with the past is like fighting your shadow on the wall. The more you strike, the larger and more terrifying it grows. And the miracle is, when you stop condemning yourself, you start hearing your own laughter from the very beginning. The laughter of a child learning to ride a bike, falling flat, then getting up, with no grudge against the ground. That child is still inside you. Forgiveness is giving it room to breathe. But forgiveness doesn't stop at your own doorstep. It opens a larger door to the world outside. Because if you can look at yourself with eyes of compassion, you'll begin to look at others with the same eyes. When someone hurts you with sharp words, careless actions, you often react instantly. Why did they do this to me? The question is valid, but not deep enough. Go one step further. Where did they learn to hurt? Every behavior has roots. No one is born knowing how to cause pain. They learn it from old wounds, from words hurled at them when they were small, from unnamed fears. The man roaring in anger might be the boy who once cowered in a corner while parents fought. The cold woman might be the girl abandoned without explanation. Understanding this doesn't mean you must embrace every toxic behavior. Understanding is so you don't carry the flame of anger in your heart. You can walk away, set boundaries, but you don't need to plant more seeds of resentment in already barren soil. Forgiving the world, therefore, is not accepting every injustice. It's refusing to join the spiral of retaliation. It's saying, enough. The chain of pain stops with me. And when you do that, you'll realize a simple yet profound truth. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to others. It's a gift you give yourself. It's how you reclaim space for your heart to beat for joy instead of burden. Most of us are taught that intelligence is knowing a lot, calculating quickly, winning arguments, or remembering the exact date of a battle 300 years ago. That's the intelligence of books, report cards, shiny trophies on a shelf. But there's another kind of intelligence, quieter, deeper, far rarer. It's not measured by scores or shown in sharp words. It's the ability to step into another's inner world as if it were your own home, sit by their fireplace, and feel the warmth or cold they're living in. This wisdom needs no degree. It just requires setting aside the ego, screaming, "I'm right," to listen to another story. When someone insults you, the first reaction is often to build a towering defensive wall. They're wrong. I'm right. They deserve punishment. That wall feels safe for a moment, but it also makes you a prisoner of your own anger. Now try another way. Imagine watching a play. The villain struts out, growling, flailing arms. The audience might boo, throw tomatoes. But you, if you're the director, you know that actor has rehearsed this role since childhood. He learned to growl from a father who growled at him. He learned to flail from punches that landed in his youth. The role isn't his essence, it's the costume he wears because he was never taught to remove it. Forgiveness begins when you stop throwing tomatoes and quietly step onto the stage, looking into the trembling eyes behind the fierce mask. You don't have to agree with the role. You just need to see that the actor is human, once a child who cried. This sounds hard because we're used to snap judgments. Judgment is like fast food, cheap, convenient, instantly filling. Understanding a person is like cooking from scratch, selecting ingredients, washing, slow simmering, waiting. It takes time, effort, and sometimes you taste bitterness before the dish is done. But in that process, you nurture something fast food can never give, the survival of your own heart. Try a small exercise. Next time someone hurts you, instead of retaliating, take 3 minutes, just 3, to imagine their life. Picture them at 5, 10, 20. What words did they hear? Who did they lose? How did they learn to protect themselves? You don't need to be perfectly accurate. You just need to crack open a small gap in your defensive wall for light to slip through. Those 3 minutes won't change the other person, but they'll change you. They turn you from a judge on a high seat into a quiet companion on a dusty road. And strangely, when you stop judging, you find yourself forgiven by yourself. Now go further. Look at larger conflicts between nations, groups, opposing ideologies. We call each other enemies, demons, threats. But if you zoom out really far, what do you see? A tiny planet hanging in space, with 7 billion people crammed onto it, each carrying their own story, each believing their story is the only truth. From that height, borders vanish, ethnicities vanish. All that remains are children raised in different homes, learning different lessons, now shouting in each other's faces because no one will listen. Forgiving the world isn't a fantasy of overnight peace. It's refusing to keep throwing stones into the vortex of violence. Every time you choose understanding over condemnation, you pull one brick from the wall of hatred humanity has built for thousands of years. The wall may not collapse immediately, but it weakens a little. And that's a start. Some will say, but if I forgive, won't they take advantage? A fair question. Forgiveness isn't foolishness. You can forgive a wild beast, but don't need to open its cage to be torn apart. Forgiveness is the heart's work. Boundaries are the mind's. They don't contradict. They complement. Think of the ocean. Waves may rage, crash against rocks, shatter, but deep below, the ocean remains calm. Forgiveness is that depth. It doesn't stop waves from rising. Life will still have conflict, pain, but it keeps you from being swept away. And when you live from that depth, you'll notice something strange. Others start to change when they no longer have to defend against you. Not always, but sometimes a single non-judgmental glance is enough to melt years of ice. Pain has a strange quality. It never fully dies, it just reincarnates. A child harshly scolded in a dark kitchen may grow up and repeat those exact words to their own child on a sunny afternoon. A boy abandoned on a street corner may become a man who coldly pushes his wife away when she needs an embrace most. Pain doesn't vanish. It dons new clothes, changes its voice, and continues its journey across generations. You can call it karma, the cycle of hurt, or simply life. The name doesn't matter. What matters is recognizing. If no one stops, the chain drags on forever. A toxic word from 1950 may still echo in a child's trembling voice in 2025. Imagine holding a red-hot rope at one end. The other, the one who hurt you, grips the far end. You think you're holding tight to punish them, but your hand is the one burning. Forgiveness is letting go. Not to drop the rope and let it keep burning, but to extinguish the flame before it reaches the next hand. Many misunderstand forgiveness as letting it slide. No, forgiveness is stopping the transmission. It's the moment you say, the pain ends here. I won't turn it into action, words, or new wounds. Look at your family. Is there a phrase repeated from grandparents to grandchildren? Men don't cry. Girls must be good. Money is everything. Those aren't just words. They're stones thrown from generation to generation, each toss adding a new crack. Forgiveness is picking up the stone, examining it closely, then setting it down instead of hurling it. You don't have to like the stone. You just need to stop making it fly. Some ask, but without punishment, how is justice served? Justice and forgiveness aren't enemies. Justice is the domain of law, society, natural consequences. Forgiveness is the heart's domain. A judge can sentence prison, but only you decide whether to carry that prison in your heart for life. Think of a garden. Weeds grow because the soil was neglected, seeds blown in from other gardens. Uprooting weeds is necessary, but if you yank in anger, you may harm the flowers growing beside them. Forgiveness is pulling weeds with gentle hands, leaving clean soil for new seeds. And what are those new seeds? Unconditional kindness. The apology you give your child, though you swore never to bow. The hug you offer your partner, though you were taught hugs are weakness. Every kind act is a shovel breaking the old chain. But don't expect the chain to snap instantly. It's been woven for thousands of years. One person stopping isn't enough to save the world, but it's enough to save themselves and those closest. A mother who chooses not to yell, though she was yelled at. A father who chooses to listen, though his grandfather said, men don't need words. Those moments are small, but they're the first cracks in a thick wall of hatred. There's an old story. A Zen master passes a burning village. Villagers shout, "Master, save us." He looks around, sees a child crying beside their mother's body. He picks up the child, places them in another woman's arms, and walks on. The villagers rage. "You didn't save the whole village?" The master replies, "I just saved the world. For if this child grew up in hatred, they would burn 1,000 more villages." Forgiveness is like that. It doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to be in the right place. A handshake instead of a punch. An I understand instead of you're wrong. A minute of silence instead of 10 minutes of arguing. Those moments are drops cooling the burning rope. And as you practice forgiveness, you'll discover a paradox. The first healed isn't the hurter, but you. Resentment is like acid. It corrodes the container before the contents. Forgiveness is a new container. But don't rush. Forgiveness isn't a sprint. Sometimes you forgive today, and tomorrow resentment sprouts like weeds after rain. That's normal. Life is a garden, not a museum. Weeds will regrow. You'll pull them again. Each pull leaves the soil a little cleaner, and one day you'll stand in a garden free of weeds, not because they vanished forever, but because you've learned to pull them before they become a forest. Eventually, you'll realize forgiveness is no longer something you do. It becomes how you are. Like breathing, You don't remind your lungs to contract and expand. They know. Forgiveness is the same. Once it's in your bones, you don't sit, close your eyes, chant, "I forgive" like a ritual. You just live. And forgiveness flows from there, quiet as an underground stream, nourishing a field. Imagine standing by a river at dawn. The water is mirror still, reflecting a misty sky. Suddenly a stone drops, ripples spread, push, overlap. That's the moment someone hurts you. The natural reaction is to pick another stone and throw back, then another, until the river is a storm. But if you learn to stand still, just stand still, what happens? The ripples still spread, still push, but gradually weaken, dissolve, and the surface flattens again. Not because you erased the first stone, but because you didn't fuel it. Forgiveness is that stillness, not helplessness, but the strength of one who knows every wave passes. And once you're used to stillness, you'll notice something strange. Stones others throw at you no longer rock you. They still fall, still ripple, but the waves don't reach your neck. You've learned to float. Some ask, how do I know I've truly forgiven? The answer is almost absurdly simple. You know when you no longer need to know. When the memory of an old wound arises and your heart doesn't clench. When their name is spoken and your mouth isn't bitter. When you can wish them well, not with hollow words, but with sincere silence in your heart, then you've forgiven. But don't seek that sign like a medal. Forgiveness isn't a destination, it's the path. Some days you walk fast, some days you rest under a tree. Some days you think you've arrived, then a cold wind blows and you're back at the start. It's all part of the journey. Remember, you don't forgive to become a saint. You forgive to become human. The real human, not the version caged in resentment's glass. The human who can laugh loudly without fear of cracking, cry without fear of drowning, love without fear of betrayal. And when you live from there, the world is no longer a battlefield. It's a classroom. Everyone you meet is a teacher in disguise. The grumpy vendor teaches patience. The driver who cuts you off teaches letting go. The ex teaches that love isn't possession. Every lesson hurts, but every lesson opens. Another story. An old man sits by a lake, tossing pebbles one by one. His grandson asks, "What are you doing?" He replies, "Each pebble is a grudge. When it sinks, I lighten a little." The boy picks a big pebble, hurls it hard. Waves splash wildly. The old man smiles. See? Throw hard, big waves. Throw gently, small waves. But sooner or later the pebble sinks. The question is whether you keep picking new pebbles. Forgiveness is stopping the picking of new pebbles. Not because the world runs out of pebbles, but because you've learned to walk barefoot without pain. And then, on an ordinary day, you'll realize you no longer distinguish forgiving myself from forgiving others. The boundary dissolves. You see that every mistake, every hurt, every darkness is a low note in the same melody. Without low notes, how can there be high? Without night, how can there be stars? This is where masters speak of sudden enlightenment, but don't wait for thunder or lightning. Enlightenment often comes quietly, like realizing you've forgotten your watch long ago. You no longer forgive, because there's nothing left to forgive. Only a gentle emptiness remains, where love grows like grass after rain. You don't need to believe in gods to live from there. You just need to believe the obvious truth. We're all children learning to walk in the dark, bumping walls, crying, then standing up. Some cry louder, some hide tears better, but all are learning. And when you see that clearly, you'll smile at yourself, at the stranger on the bus, at the one who hurt you deepest. That smile isn't condescension from above. It's the smile of recognition. Oh, we're on the same team. Forgiveness, in the end, is coming home. Home isn't a place without pain. Home is where pain no longer rules. Home is where you can fall without fear of exile, cry without fear of mockery, love without fear of rejection. So forgive, not tomorrow, not when you're ready. Forgive right now, in every breath,